when Raw is in its closing minutes, I always think, what am I going to lead with? And then, Rhea Ripley comes back. And now that question is answered. The Raw goes off the air with a great cliffhanger. I loved what they did in the closing. Well, I liked the whole thing with Dom and Liv tonight, the whole saga. I think the fans are eating it up. And I thought having Liv help Dom beat his dad for the first time was a great excuse to have Dom show enthusiasm for hugging her. And then, of course, it leads to a moment between them of physical suggestiveness, sexual suggestiveness. And I thought, well, that's a great thing. We can talk about that. And it's an advance of the storyline. And then Rhea Ripley's music plays and she comes out and Dom hangs his head. Then he looks at her and asks for a hug. And then the show closes with her just pushing him to the side and starting to walk away. So it seems like she's rejecting him. I thought that they produced it well, filmed it well. It was a really good moment. So Chris, first of all, what do you think of the storyline overall? Because you're a first-time on-camera co-host here on our YouTube channel, and what do you think of what they did tonight?
Yeah, I think the storyline is progressing really well from the standpoint of it's not as simple as just an attraction for Dominic of why he would be interested in Liv. Everything that she's done, she gave him something that he really desired, which is a victory over his father.
Yeah.
And I kind of look at it as maybe younger people that his girlfriend Rhea Ripley was away at she had an internship in another city over the summer, and he was hanging out with one of the girls. That was one of her, maybe not her friends, or maybe her rival, but he didn't know that the internship ended early, and she's back in town. So I think the way that they ended it was a really good cliffhanger. Also, the element earlier in the show is that, of course, that Damian Priest seemed to know she was coming. So, and the other rest of Judgment Day did not. So there's an element of,
good point,
of separation there. How some people knew she would be there, some didn't, and how they will react to that. On top of just Dominic's own reaction now that his mommy has returned and he showed affection for Liv, and now he's in a lot of trouble.
I didn't even think about that. I hadn't had a second to think about it. That Priest said he had a surprise for Dom later. He wouldn't let his other cohorts in Judgment Day know. And that's what it was. So yeah, that's a great point in that, because Priest had told Dom that he talked to Rhea, I think it was last week. And Dom was like, oh crap. I guess I can't just, say anything about this because Priest is talking to her too. So yeah, this indicates that Priest and Ripley are together, communicating, and so as we kind of see how this all shakes out, ultimately, I think the average fan is still a little up in the air, wondering is it going to be, is Dom going to reconcile with Ripley, or is Dom going to end up with Liv? And I think you can, if you're just an average viewer watching, really any viewer, you can go, I could see Dom falling for Liv, and they planted the seed tonight with Liv helping Dom beat his dad. And Priest is upset. He's tired of people telling him what to do. Some of this, of course, depends on Ripley if she wants to still be with Dom or not. How do you think that is going to play out?
I think that they're going to have a lot of different dimensions to it. You have the Liv Rhea dimension of they actually have a squabble and they have a disagreement and they both want to be the women's champion. So you have that. You also have an internal Judgment Day squabble over who does Liv choose. How did Priest know, and the other folks didn't, and having to choose sides. So I think the thing about it is that it's a multi-layered storyline, and I think that the way they've done it so far, they have a lot of options, and it gives a lot of fans entertainment and excitement and kind of uncertainty where to go over the next several weeks, probably leading up to SummerSlam.
And where do you think they have the most potential? Obviously they have something in mind, so I mean it's not like you're recommending something that they haven't decided on, but where do you think the most is it where do you think they have the most fodder storyline wise in terms of kind of the chapters that they tell to SummerSlam and really even beyond with the Liv, Rhea, Dom, Priest situation? Those four in particular. I mean there's others involved obviously in the periphery.
Well, I think just from watching the show today, Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley are baby faces, and I think we can get to what Damian Priest and Seth Rollins did earlier, but Rhea Ripley was getting loud ovations before, and Dominic's a heel. No one's going to cheer him for whatever reason. I don't think he could, save babies out of drowning water, and people still boo him. and Liv is obviously a heel,
Which
as
would be
well.
wrong, by the way, but
Yes.
you're not wrong. It would be wrong to do that, but you're not wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But so I think what this will lead to a Rhea and Priest babyface turn, maybe splitting from the Judgment Day and the other folks being in the Judgment Day and as heels.
Yeah. I think Liv Morgan is all of her faults as a performer. I don't say all of them. A lot of her faults as a performer are actually working for her now in this storyline. Like there's this sort of over the top flirtatiousness, which was always sort of part of her act as a heel or a babyface, and it always was sort of off putting, was sort of just cringy. Like why is she, walking to the ring like she's on, doing in some other business. And it's just felt sort of tone deaf. And now it's like perfect. She's good at it. It comes natural to her. Like she's totally in Dom's face. I mean, the thing that they did with her stretching Dom earlier was, they find, they're going to find clever ways to kind of work something into it. But her story of, oh, we need to stretch before the match, and it turns into that stretch. And then you got Pat McAfee on the replay, talking about how, she got her face. She was looking at a different body part on Dom when she was stretching his hamstring. I mean, it's just the moments that they're creating, the visuals are, I mean, I was going to say they're not, clever's not the word, but it's fun seeing the creative things that they come up with each week to tempt Dom, have Dom fall a little into it, and then have to pull himself back because he's scared or still loyal to Ripley or just doesn't trust Liv. And then after the match, when Liv jumped into his arms and they fell backwards, and it almost seemed like they were going to kiss, but of course it was perfect for the moment that Ripley came out. Obviously, this is not one of the more realistic scenarios. If it wasn't, in my view, working so well and the crowd wasn't so into it and everyone wasn't playing their part so well, I'd be ripping on the, happy coincidences of all the little, coincidental misfortunes that lead to innuendo and awkward situations for people to walk in on. But it's WWE, it's 2024, and if you tell a good story, and it's not like a main event world title match or two smart wrestlers overreacting to something that was clearly an accident as a way to set up a breakup, like that I would still rip on, because that's dumb. But this is just working and it's fun. And if you go with the flow, I mean, obviously the crowd is, and they're eating this up. So do you agree with me on Liv, and add anything else you want to that?
Yeah, I think this is an example of someone being in the right role. I think there's like a longer conversation wrestling and who's in what role and why. But I think Liv is doing, whatever she's done in the past, whatever she may do in the future, she's doing very well in this role. She plays it very well. I agree with you that this could lead to a lot of hokiness, but it, obviously whenever Carlito shows, I feel like they just put Carlito in the Judgment Day just so he could be there at this point to say that's cool every week. And they're,
Yes.
A month ago they were like, well, that will probably make it better, so let's put him in the Judgment Day. But I think the thing about it is that we knew that it would lead, one, that it led to the anticipation of a very popular wrestler returning, because that at some point Rhea's going to come back and she's going to do something. So that was today. And then obviously it leads to a lot of different dimensions, and it's not silliness. It didn't take away from Priest's, title defense against Seth Rollins or his potential title defense against Gunther. It's kind of in the corner for him. So, and it hasn't taken away from the Judgment Day. They won the tag team titles with JD McDonough and Finn Balor. So it just has so many different layers and dimensions that you allow the silliness, because there's also some seriousness in there as well.
No, that's really well put. Do you like the timing of Rhea Ripley coming back? I mean, if she's healthy enough to wrestle at SummerSlam, which was penciled in, or the conjecture was that would likely be the case, and I'm assuming based on this that is, but they could have her at ringside or in some other role, I guess. Just leaving the door open for other possibilities. But did the time away due to injury turn into the old cliche, a blessing in disguise? I mean, her being away while they told this story, and all these things are going on. And you're right, Carlito saying that's cool, and JD and Finn Balor peeking around the corner, being voyeurs on this stuff. I mean, everyone's playing their part so well. It's fun. But now she's coming back, and the Judgment Day, which she took very seriously, has turned into a bit of a clown show that even Damian Priest is having a tough time controlling. So it's not just what Dom and Liv are up to, but it's what's happened to the Judgment Day since she's been gone. And I think this absence is actually going to work to the benefit of it's created a real fertile storyline for her to return to. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things is that because she's been away, she hasn't had to be there for the week-to-week reaction of every little thing. And it's kind of built up to this crescendo when she comes now. I was hopeful, though she looked like she was walking a little gingerly to the ring. I don't know if that was an injured walk or a walk with purpose. I'm not sure. But I assume that she wouldn't come back until she was about ready to go. SummerSlam obviously is the first weekend of August. So when she came back, I assumed that she'd be ready for that. That would be the best time for her to come back. I don't think that she can come back for weeks and weeks and weeks and just talk. She has to be involved in some action. So I'm assuming that she's either cleared or very close to being cleared. But I think that's the best way for her to get back involved, is being ready to wrestle, and not just a character who talks. People want to see her beat up Liv Morgan, and the quicker they get to that, or at least have a scheduled date for that, the better.
Absolutely. All right, let's pause and just quickly introduce ourselves, take care of some business, let people know who we are and what we're about, and how they can participate. And then we've got our on-site correspondent who attended Raw tonight in person, in the waiting room, ready to join us, and we'll find out what it was like in the building. I'm curious to find out what happened between Ripley and Dom after Raw went off the air. It might be as simple as Rhea left the ring and Dom just stared. Maybe more happened. We'll find out. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show, covering the Monday, July 8th, 2024 episode of WWE Monday Night Raw. I'm Wade Keller, the host of the show. I'm the editor, publisher, and founder of the long-running Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter and the website PWTorch.com, and also the host of various podcasts, including this, the Wade Keller Post Show, and also the Wade Keller Podcast. There's a red logo for our post shows on the podcast feed. There's a blue logo for our main podcast feed. Both are free to subscribe to on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any iOS or Android app. Just search Wade Keller. The blue logo show featuring our podcast is not part of our YouTube channel. It's audio only. And tomorrow, longtime Pro Wrestling Torch columnist Greg Parks, host of Wrestling Night in America, who hosted the Money in the Bank post show right here on the PWTorch YouTube channel, will be joining me once again as co-host to talk all things AEW, WWE, and more. So if you have questions for the flagship that you want us to answer, or topics you want us to address, or a rant you want us to read and react to, the email address is the same as it is for these post shows. Wade Keller Podcast at PWTorch.com. Wade Keller Podcast at gmail.com. Wade Keller Podcast at gmail.com. Our YouTube viewers can see the address on the screen. If you're watching us live on YouTube, you can send questions there. We got a mailbag filling up right now. You can add to it. If you don't watch us live on YouTube, you can always use that email address to be part of the show, even if you don't watch us live and aren't part of the chat or a video caller. And so take note of that and send in your questions or comments for our Dynamite post show this Wednesday, our SmackDown post show Friday, and our Raw post show next Monday, and on and on. But you can also send questions on anything going on in wrestling to that email for tomorrow's flagship on the Wade Keller Podcast, which will be recording late tomorrow afternoon. That's the current plan, on Tuesday afternoon. In the meantime, if you're joining us live, we've got a chat room open and we'll keep an eye on things. We encourage super chats. There's more and more people chatting. It's hard for me to keep up on reading everything. So if you really want to make the show and throw a little bit in our tip jar, that's much appreciated. We are enjoying this format greatly, and the chat room has been a real fun thing to be part of. And we thank everybody who has participated in that, and also those who participate in the super chat aspect of it. The other way you can join us is as a VIP member or Patreon supporter. We put up a code that allows you to enter the waiting room and be a video caller, or you can turn off your cam or cover up your cam and just be an audio caller. But you can join us using the code that is posted on our Patreon page at patreon.com/PWTorchVIP, or using the code found in my Raw report at PWTorchVIP.com. If you're a full VIP subscriber, getting our ad-free website and access to our archives, and you go that route, that's where you find the code. Same thing Wednesdays and Friday nights during Dynamite and SmackDown. All right. So we are here to talk Raw, and the other voice you hear on the podcast side and the other face and voice you see and here on the YouTube channel is Christopher Maitland. He is a PWTorch contributor, part of the PWTorch Daily Cast lineup. Chris, we've done shows before, never a video show. It's great to meet you here via YouTube. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I should plug the show, right? That's what I'm supposed to do.
I was about to, if you didn't, I was about to throw to you. Tell people about your Daily Cast Coast to Coast.
So I host with my very good friend Justin McClelland, Wrestling Coast to Coast, which is a show that talks about pretty much anything other than WWE or AEW. So that obviously gets a lot of attention. We do mostly independent wrestling. We do different shows every week, just kind of go over what we think. It's been really helpful to us to kind of get a different perspective on wrestling, maybe on the outside of the mainstream, but also future stars that we may see pop up in AEW or WWE. Sometimes we see them as extras. Sometimes we see them doing as enhancement matches. Sometimes we see them actually signed. We did a show last week, Freelance Wrestling, which was a great show for us because it was a very simple show of faces and heels that are easily definable. Like, you don't get that always in wrestling these days.
Yeah,
and we're doing
not tonight either.
Not tonight, yes.
Yeah,
and then
talk about.
We're doing Beyond Wrestling this week, American Raw, their big show that took place on July 4th. Our show usually comes out Wednesdays, sometimes early Thursday mornings, depending on how late I have to start recording based on how my kids are acting. But we are part of the PWTorch Daily Cast lineup. You can email us at torchcoasttocoast@gmail.com, and Justin and I will be happy to talk to you.
That's awesome. So YouTube viewers, you can see that we just say search PWTorch in your podcast app of choice, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iOS, Android, whatever app you use, to subscribe free to the PWTorch Daily Cast lineup. That includes the NXT post show, PWT Talks NXT. It also includes Wrestling Night in America, which is a show hosted by Greg Parks, who covers the big events in pro wrestling with a live YouTube format. Also, the PWTorch 90s Past Cast, where Patrick Moynihan and Alex McDonald discuss a PWTorch newsletter in great depth, usually over 2 hours, from 30 years ago that week. I've been doing this a long time. Those newsletters from now 1994 cover a fascinating time in pro wrestling, and they dissect it every week. Also, the All Elite Conversation Club, Joel Donnell and Greg Canner, dedicated to AEW. It's obviously All Elite Conversation Club focusing on Dynamite, Collision, pay-per-views, and all that. Also, Kevin and Javier, now Kevin Duncan and Javier Machado, now hosting the WWE focus show called Acknowledging WWE. I think I covered the shows there. That's all free. VIP members, Patreon subscribers get those shows also on the podcast feed, but with the pre-recorded ads and plugs removed. So it's a more streamlined listening experience. So check it out. Go VIP, support us on Patreon, pwtorch.com/govip for full details on that if you want to get the ad-free versions of all those shows. But otherwise, you're absolutely encouraged and welcome to subscribe free. Just search Wade Keller for the Wade Keller podcast and search PWTorch for the PWTorch Daily Cast. All right, so let's pivot now to our on-site correspondent. Lance attended in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada tonight. Very beautiful aerial scene, Lance, of your city. Welcome. Thanks for joining us and taking time to talk to us after a busy night.
Well, thank you very much, Wade. Can you hear me?
You sound great.
Great. Yep. I'm glad. So you appreciate that I cleaned up the town before they took those photos?
I just wanted to go biking around all those around on that shoreline and then visit some of those old buildings. I love old architecture. I love architecture.
You are an avid bicyclist. You would never run out of trails here. So there's your Ottawa tourism kick there.
Depending on how things go, Lance, I might be moving. So I might be looking across the border. So it's good to know it's a good biking city.
Well, and going from Minneapolis, the weather won't change that much for you. So you're pretty good here.
I was just like 20. I don't know how many, like 30 miles from the Canadian border all last week. So
which part? Because I know you're from Minneapolis, and I think Fort Francis and Thunder Bay are near there. And I know this is enthralling to the listeners right now. But
Chris looks so bored. Chris, come on. No, I'm kidding.
I'm a new Midwesterner of 7 years, so I've only been to Minneapolis once, so I've done camping up there.
So extremely briefly, I have family who visit Minneapolis to go shopping in your giant mall there, Mall of America, I think.
Yes, Mall of America. It's fun. I like it.
Yeah, from Thunder Bay, so we do make the trip. But there you go. But that's enough. I'm sure I probably scared away most of your people now.
I know I'm not. I'm just going to encourage people to go to Grand Marais. That's just a wonderful port city. Voted the best small town in America a few years back. Great food, great art, great ice cream shop. It's just real fun place to hang out. So had a real good weekend with my family up on July.
Wonderful. I've been here more than half my life now, which just says a lot, because in the first 20 years of my life, I was in over a dozen different cities, and that's all I'm going to say. That'll steer people away, but it's my home now. So I do like Ottawa very much. So thank you for that.
Yeah, good. Well, maybe I hope to visit sometime. I have my upgraded my driver's license now. I can actually cross the border again. That's required now. You have to have that. Whatever they're verified.
They're letting you back in now. Okay, good.
Yes. All right, cool. Cool. So Lance, first thing I'm going to ask you, and Chris, I'll throw to you in a few minutes here to jump into with questions. What happened after Raw went off the air? I don't know when they cut it off. If you know when they cut it off for us, but Dom asked for a hug, and Rhea stepped to the side, put her hand on his shoulder, shoved him gently, looked like she was going to walk away. What happened after that? Much of anything?
Get ready. She walked away, and he followed her like a lapdog all the way back, and they didn't give it to us. Kind of funny enough, my daughter, huge Rhea Ripley fan, if you may remember. You remember every caller, I'm sure. But she's a huge Rhea Ripley fan, and it was getting on 10:58, and I'm like, she's not showing up, but every sign's pointing to yes, So people were getting antsy. I don't know if you heard the crowd, "We want mommy." I don't know if you overheard that.
Yep. That came through.
But yeah, at 10:58, we're lacking confidence, but she did come out, and exactly as you said, Liv Morgan bailed. Figured they have to get a SummerSlam program going soon, right? So figured she'd be coming. But I think it's tune in next week to see what happens. So we got about 10 seconds of mommy. It was a really nice reception for her, obviously. But then she started walking away. So it was, it wasn't more than a minute of cheering for her, right? Because she started walking like you didn't. All you caught was Dominic chasing her, basically, to the back like a lapdog. Like I said, that's all you missed.
So how did the pop for her compare to everything else? CM Punk, Seth Rollins, Rey Mysterio, on and on. Where did that rank? Obviously, surprises have an advantage, but it's also near the end of the night. I don't know. So talk about that.
Yeah, it's really hard to get cheers near the end of the night. I noticed the crowd sort of died down. That's no surprise, obviously. I'm hoarse after a couple hours, but CM Punk, first of all, he's the first pop, right? And second of all, it's CM Punk. Nobody expected him, so he got the pop of the night big time. For me, anyway. That's what I detected. My daughter's here to tell me, I'm her dad, so it's her job to tell me when I'm wrong.
Yes, I know about that.
And then the second biggest pop, honestly, I feel, was Seth Rollins, because I don't think people expected Seth. I did. I'm not that smart, but obviously they need to start. Seth's got a bone to pick, right, because of last night. And then I'd say Rhea Ripley after that, and then I would say Sami Zayn, and then Rey Mysterio. But I have to say the pop of the night honestly went to the guy that was completely hammered. Probably should have been kicked out in section 104. They replayed John Cena's entrance from Money in the Bank, and he literally jumped up and down and was screaming, because he was so in the bag that he thought John Cena was coming out, and it was like that Homer Simpson singing mono at the end of the monorail song. He's just jumping up and down waiting for John Cena to come out. So
that's tremendous.
That's
why we need on-site correspondents. By the way, Wade Keller podcast at gmail.com. If you want to be an on-site correspondent like Lance is, you can be on camera. You don't have to be. You can be audio only. Join us afterwards, and we'd love to hear about this. Just let me know date, name, city in the subject line. It's a little easier to stay organized. That's tremendous. Yeah. Wow. Okay, Chris, let me throw to you for a question for Lance.
Yeah, a question I have is involving Sami Zayn. He got a huge ovation. But also Braun Breakers, it seemed to me he was getting more of a Canadian version of what, as they were chanting "Ole, Ole" while he was speaking. Did I hear that correctly? It was kind of a way to kind of just not listen to what he was saying.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, there was. You're absolutely right. I thought that was kind of rude, actually, because Braun's what, 25 years old. He's still cutting his teeth, so to say. And yeah, I thought that was actually kind of rude. I was rather embarrassed for my Canadian folk there. But when you're with Sami Zayn, it's going to be hard to. No one's going to cheer anybody against Sami Zayn, maybe except for Punk, maybe. But yeah, for sure. And I have to say, my daughter here, Elise, she saw how thrilled I was when they announced Dragunov versus Braun, and the crowd was quite lackluster for it, to be honest. I hate to say that because I was jacked for it, really, and I thought it was great. I don't know how it came off on television, but it's kind of disappointing. And then and you talk about unexpected reactions. Damage Control against the tandem there of Lyra Valkyria and the two Party Girls. I found they got a bigger reaction than I thought, especially in the dead zone. When you're talking around the sixth quarter, seventh quarter, or whatever it was, probably the sixth, they really surprised me with their reaction. The reaction of that I got quite a bit of heat, and then I was trying to explain to my daughter who are the heels and who were I've lost track now. I thought Damage Control were heels.
Yeah, it was a weird night.
Yeah, and I thought the tandem, the threesome there. I don't want to, Sonya Deville, who I love to have back. They seem like heels too, Sonya Deville and Zoe Stark, and yeah, so. There was that. So yeah, there was a weird mix. And then between who was it? Bronson Reed and who did he? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Sorry, I'm looking at
Pete Dunne.
Pete Dunne. Oh yeah. So he was the bad guy, obviously. So there was another weird heel match that I couldn't explain. I can give away the main event later on if you want. If you want to give people a spoiler warning about that, there were two pretty good matches, and I was hoping for NXT guys, but we didn't get any. We got some main roster talent in a main event. Now I haven't seen it in many years. Yeah.
Let's consider this the spoiler warning. Fast forward 30 seconds or so, people. If you don't want to know what's going to be on the little mentioned WWE main event show, the WWE's 6th hour of TV that some people don't know exists. What happened at those tapes?
So here's Alba Fire, who's the tag team champion, if you're not keeping track. I know you are. And Ivy Nile, which I thought was really well done. And of course, Ivy Nile lost to Alba Fire in some weird chicanery from her tag team partner, which again, I only forget wrestling names when I'm on your podcast, but Isla Dawn, I think that's her name. So anyway, interfered. And then I had to explain to my daughter that Ivy Nile was with the Creed brothers who came out next. And they fought two members of the LWO. I think it was Joaquin Phoenix. He's the one with the spinal tattoo, correct? I believe that's him. And Dragon. Dragon Lee, right? Something like that. Anyway, and the Creed brothers won clean. So it was a dirty victory by Fire and a clean victory with the Creeds, who also didn't get a huge reaction. But I guess that's main event for you. People don't generally jump out and cheer that much, but yeah, other than that, those are my take homes. I'm more than happy to answer any other questions or think of anything else that came to mind. The arena was about, I'd say 80% full. It doesn't sound like much, but it seems fuller than last time because they do tape off the real nosebleeds, the 300 section, around the hard cam and everything, above the hard cam and that half of the arena. But really, the rest of it seemed quite full, and there's a capacity of 11,000 for the arena for hockey. So I can assume that they had quite a few, to be honest. There. Yeah, we saw people all the way up to the ceiling. That's right, hanging off the rafters. Yeah, there we go. Oh,
Cole referred to it as a capacity crowd late in the show when they went to a wide shot of the arena, but it sounds like that would be overstating it. There were empty seats.
That's overstating it. Now, please, I'm going to get blasted, but it wasn't an AEW show by any means, but it was definitely it was capacity for what they didn't tape off. Basically, I would say that, but they taped off quite a bit around the hard cam. I mean, there was literally a time where I knew a guy at Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and I literally could have touched the hard cam if I wanted to. They don't allow that anymore. So,
no.
but I was with him, so it worked out that way. So we were on the we were behind the hard cam, and but funny enough, the ring posts seemed to be a hindrance. I couldn't see CM Punk for this entire promo. Yeah.
Oh man.
So last time we're behind the hard cam looking at at butts during the promos, and now we're looking at the corner, the corner turnbuckle. We happen to be angled just perfectly. So no satisfying this Canadian, but I still had a great time.
So in the chat room, someone watching us on Facebook asked, what was the reaction? Jonathan Ernal says, what was the reaction to all the Wyatt 6 stuff? How engaged was the crowd, since it was in the ring, but also the video that followed?
Well, did you catch am I allowed to say it? Did you catch the holy shit chants? Because I don't know if they edited those out or not. There was a lot of holy shit chants. There were the lights. People used more lights, more of their cellular flashlights there than they did for the Yeet entrance by Jey Uso, which was pretty surprising. I couldn't believe the lights came out for them, but not for poor Jey. But it was Jey got a good pop too, obviously. And people seem to pop quite a bit for after the "you suck," people seem to pop quite a bit for Gable. I don't know if that's a sympathy thing or not, but I noticed that as well.
Still haven't figured out where they're going with that. But I'm curious. I'm curious where they go with it. Just in general, Sean from Murfreesboro wants us to ask you what. No, we actually talked about that. What was the other question? Oh, BJF says, Lance, how was the crowd in the arena? It seemed quite quiet on TV. So you talked about the size of the crowd, but did it seem like they were on the quieter end of WWE crowds based on what you experienced watching on TV?
So I would say yes, but I think you got to mention standard deviation. They were really loud in some places for their, for quote unquote the right things. Like I said, I felt terrible. I thought that Dragunov and Breaker put on a great match, and it was probably the quietest the crowd was. I was excited, but I don't know who else was. And but high peaks and low valleys, to be honest with you. And again, surprised with that damage control in the dead quarter there. I was really surprised with that. So I don't know. I'm trying not to repeat myself. And when it started, the whole Punk Rollins confrontation, that got a lot. I don't know if you heard, if it came off on TV, but it was really quite loud. But they do have very low valleys here in Ottawa, and Ottawa isn't a valley as well. So we've got that going for us. But it was quite quiet during some of it for sure. Yeah, maybe the Bronson Reed match was a little quieter too. Obviously, I'm a big Bronson guy. I'm a big Bronson guy. He was fired. I was so glad to see him brought back. I heard a bit of his backstory. I'm guessing it's all true and everything. So I'm really rooting for Bronson Reed, and I think he's hopefully on the right path there. I don't know how you feel about him, but I think he's kind of underappreciated for a different body shape, and he can definitely move for a guy like that size.
I think he's kind of in the level he's going to be at. I mean, I don't see him getting higher or lower, but I think it's good to have somebody like him in that spot, getting TV time, having good matches. Like you said, a different body type. He's believable in his character. I don't think they're going to protect him and move him into the top tier. I just don't see that ever happening. Chris, do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I don't see that. I think he's someone who, in a different era of wrestling, would have been the heel opponent for a babyface champion. But I think that to get the most out of him, you have to make him be a monster who beats most of his opponents, and that's kind of Gunther's role right now.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have 2 or 3 of those. So I think he kind of is where he's going to be outside of some other changes.
I'm hoping for an IC or US title reign. I'm not looking for him to beat Cody or anything like that. So
this is neither here nor there, but I just get a kick out of Michael Cole going, he's announced at 350 pounds, but some people think he's 360 or 365. And it's like, how does someone look at somebody and at that weight and debate whether they're off by 10 or 15 pounds? I don't it feels very old school to do that.
I guess Pat McAfee knows his toilet habits. That was one of your favorites, right? right?
Oh God.
No, we won't go back there. But I have very lowbrow humor, so yeah. But
well, you're watching the right product. WWE, not our YouTube channel. Brock Benningfield says a Hogan heel type opponent, and he would have worked out well.
Oh, he would have been great for that.
90s,
yeah. Certainly moved better than King. All due respect to King Kong Bundy, all due respect, but he moved better than King Kong Bundy did and all that stuff. I'm hoping Elia has a higher ceiling too. But Bronson's doing better than you remember. I went on about Cameron Grimes perhaps in the last call because I really liked him and he didn't wind up in a good spot. But who knows? Maybe he'll be in another Bronson story and be given another shot. But I really liked him.
You mentioned the CM Punk Seth Rollins segment. I want to get a little more into that. Did you sense the crowd was like, first of all, start with 100% into CM Punk, or do you think there's anybody? And I ask this a lot because I watch, and I think some people are going to think Punk is overdoing it. Now, WWE's covered their bases in a lot of ways, storyline wise here, and I thought the Drew's attack outside the building, Punk has been very forthright, not hypocritical, at least in terms of, hey, I'm telling you what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to do it. But is there any? But Drew's been so witty, and so did you sense at all the Ottawa crowd had anybody who was against Punk, or was this just no sign of that at this point?
So this is going to sound, we're a very political town because obviously we're federal government, but this is going to sound just like that. But literally, they cheered Punk big time. And then when Seth gave his argument and Punk his counter argument, all they did was cheer for both of them. So I'm trying to think, okay, so you like both of them, right? So because I thought, Punk's. I think Punk is good to be. To use your term, a prickish good guy. I think he's really good at that. And I think that's his destiny. Yeah, either love him or you hate him, sort of thing. But I don't think Punk would be really good at being an all-natural heel, white baby face, white as in knight in shining armor, white Cody Rhodes sort of thing. I don't think that's his gig. He's a disgruntled guy. So
that'd be so phony if he tried that.
Yeah, so he needs to ride that line, right? So I think they're doing right by him. I mean, I guess Triple H isn't the perfect booker, but anyone will tell you that it's come a long way from the Vince McMahon era. I hate to say, because I was a big fan of Vince McMahon in the '80s, but not anymore, obviously.
So did Seth's words for Punk lead to anyone? Did it? I know you said they're cheering for both. And I'm not like fishing for a made up answer. I was just curious, like, did some people seem to go, oh, Seth, I'm on your side and against Punk? Like, was there any sense that fans were choosing sides, or was it more, I was just entertained by it? To me, it sort of felt like, two parents are arguing and you're just, a lot of fans were just uncomfortable because they want to like both guys. So just elaborate on the mood in the crowd a little bit more in that respect.
Absolutely. Well, exactly to your point, and I'm gonna. I think there were people in both, on both sides and on each side, and that's going to be. Oh yeah. So I'm not a federal government worker, by the way. Well, that's what I'm going to sound like, but it really did sound that way, and I think there were people who sympathized more with Punk and people who sympathized more with Rollins. But to be honest, as you may or may not remember, I'm a huge Rollins guy. He's my guy, so I'm very biased towards him. But I really, really like Punk too. So I think Seth's arguments were quite good. You don't come to my match, and you don't spoil my only opportunity. Which Damian Priest, who's really riding the middle line, basically said, I'm sure it was on TV. Never mind that. When I'm through with Gunter, you can have the next shot. Well, Priest isn't getting past Gunter. I'd be shocked if that were to happen, but who knows?
Yeah.
I think that promo was very good for the crowd. It was very interesting, but it kind of not blurred the line, but it was like, we do not want them to fight just yet. So we're going to have them have animosity with each other, but Seth Rollins is still focused on the world title. CM Punk is still focused on Drew McIntyre. So we're mad at each other, but we're going to deal with this later, which to me didn't have that great of a conclusion, as well as Damian Priest being like, oh yeah, that stipulation from last week, don't worry about it. It's okay.
Right. So Triple H or, John Paul is giving you the book. How would you write it? I mean, I guess would you do for either of you, would you do a consequential sort of one minor turn of Punk to heel to get those two to spark an interest, or would you do face like they're kind of doing now, even though Punk is still kind of in the middle anyway? I think it'd be easier to turn Punk heel at this point, but I still prefer the Seth heel, honestly. But his wrestling style, as you know, isn't conducive to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think either's going heel. I mean, I think it's going to be a pick'em. If they do a one-on-one match, I think Paul Levesque does not seem to shy away from, if there's a heated issue between two people, you can just choose. I mean, there's people in the world who are not, there's not one who's purely good and one who's purely evil. Sometimes good people who have differences go at each other. Seth certainly went hard at Punk. And as we'll probably do a longer talking segment on this as we get to our video callers too. But Seth went hard at Punk, kind of shoot style a little bit, not where it felt corny, like we're trying to prove this is real, but Seth got not only the last word, because Punk was just left with a microphone in his hand saying nothing, which is, a pretty, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it was eating him up inside, but it showed some discipline. But Seth came at him, called him brittle, and that's why I'm not going to come after you. When they go after each other, I don't think either has to be heel. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this has to be secondary, really. I think Punk and Drew is the first feud. Seth and someone else maybe kind of hovering on the world title. I think at that point, they're both going to be baby faces because there's going to be a separation from them being against each other. And it's just going to be kind of what you said earlier, Wade. You can pick your side, but they're not going to be too different from what their actual character is.
And I guess Punk sort of got egg on his face because he said, "You won't disrespect me again." And then he was called brittle and a couple of other things. So I'm not sure that was smart either. Yeah.
I mean, there's, a conspiracy theorist would say WWE's creative team is testing Punk to see if he can, be disciplined enough not to create a scene behind the scenes or lash out. But
no, wait, you're not saying Punk's ordinary, are you? I don't think that's really happenstance, I'd imagine. Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
Very good. All right, Chris, anything else you want to ask Lance about his experience tonight?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything.
So Lance, tell me if there's anything we didn't ask you about that stood out.
Well, my daughter's favorite match, I'm going to say it because she's, because you might be interested in the female demographic. She really likes Damage Control. Thought that was a great match. I can't explain to her why the heels were jumped after the match. I'm still going to work on that on the way home. And she loved Braun Breaker. She said he looked like a 2-year-old throwing teddy bears. So I thought that was good. And the last time back of the event went to Bobby Lashley for the best back, but this time it went to Gable. So I guess she's a back girl. But so that's it. That's cool. The Elise Awards for this particular Raw.
How old Lance is your daughter?
She's 17. She's 17, so old enough to get into trouble.
Okay. My oldest daughter is 5. She walked in. She'd been asleep while I was watching Pete Dunne versus Bronson Reed, and asked me, "Dad, who am I rooting for?" And whenever my daughter walks in and asks me about wrestling, I always tell her I'm rooting for the babyface. I was watching Impact the other day, and I told her, well, she's heard the Joe Henry song, Doesn't Jake Something? And I was like, well, I think Pete Dunne is the babyface because Sheamus is going to come out, but then he ended up being a heel. So luckily, she was asleep by him.
Sorry about that. Sorry, did you see Joe Henry, by the way? They showed a couple of, he wasn't live, of course, but they showed him on a couple of quick, something right at the end of Raw. He was doing some turnaround thing. I don't know if he's being called up. I like to say called up from NXT, but he's a TNA. So what am I saying? Who knows where he's going? But sorry.
Yeah, they had ads in the NXT preview for tomorrow. They just showed his face and actually saw a few signs in the crowd as well, which is cool for me as someone that watches TNA regularly. That there's that crossover and that some of the wrestlers there are getting some recognition.
Absolutely. And here I was hoping for NXT wrestlers, and all I got were main roster and main event, but that's okay. There you go. But well, thank you very much. Unless there's something else, I'm more than happy to feel anything else. I think we might have covered everything, though. Sorry, I'll try to get the crowd more rambunctious next time, but they certainly had their lows, except for that drunk guy in the next section. He was into it.
We love hearing about crazy fans.
That was good. It took them a good 30 seconds to figure out Cena wasn't coming out and nobody else was standing up. So I thought it was pretty good. But I'm entertained by simple things, of course. But anyway, so there you go.
Well, I appreciate you. I don't know all the other places you lived, but you have picked up a subtle Canadian accent, Lance. I know us Midwesterners don't think we have an accent, and Canadians, I don't. Do you guys know you have an accent?
Oh, we sure do, eh? And and Boston does too. That Boston and New York. When I've done business travel, I was in New York for 6 months, 1 week on, 1 week off when I was a lot younger, and I started saying coffee and stuff like that. So I'm definitely picking up accents from all over. But it's been a real pleasure. And you have that accent, but it's not the same as the Fargo accent, is it? That's not.
No, nothing close. I mean, that's a little over the top.
Okay.
But.
Okay, it's been a real pleasure. I'll plug the Torch, obviously, a longtime member, 2-time caller, long-time member, and I really like it. My only complaint is there's too much stuff for me to get through, so I don't know if you can work on that. Well, I had to drop other podcasts.
I'll work on it. I'll just work less.
There you go.
Put less out.
Perfect.
No, we're not going to do that. All right, thanks, Lance. Appreciate it.
Perfect.
Great talking
It's
to you.
been a real pleasure. Nice talking to you, Wade. Nice meeting you,
Awesome.
Chris.
That's on you as well. Travel safe home.
Thank you.
All right, I added Ottawa to a place that I want to visit after seeing that aerial shot, which is, what they hope when they get those aerial shots from the cities, I assume, from the chambers of commerce and stuff like that.
It looked nice. Well, next week's Raw is in Dayton, and I've been there plenty of times. That's actually where Justin, my podcast partner, is from. So I'll have to.
So you're gonna say nice things or trash it?
No, Dayton's a great city. Great city. He's not here to. He'll know it better than me. He lives there, but it's a nice city. I don't know if it has the great aesthetics that Ottawa will have, but there's a lot of fun things you can do in Dayton.
I'm a big Minnesota loyalist. I've got my sweatshirt. I got a mirror image of this. I got, like more than half my clothes have some sort of Minnesota or up north logo on them. So it'd be tough. It'd be tough to leave. And the biking here is great.
So I'm someone who's made a lifetime New Yorker except college, and then I've moved now to Columbus, Ohio. So I've made a shift. But
that's a big shift.
I still wear all my New York stuff because I'm still a New Yorker at heart, though I don't have the accent. Sorry, Lance.
It'll be easy. It's easier if you move to follow your sports teams with today's technology compared to past decades. All right. So let's get to our video callers. Got a couple fresh faces here. And we're going to start with Chris, who is called. Chris, we're giving you a 3-second warning. We're about to bring you on. Again, if you want to be a video caller, you have to be a VIP member at PWTorch or a Patreon supporter. Full details on that at pwtorch.com/govip. Chris, welcome to the show. Good to talk to you. Chris from Oklahoma. Awesome.
Yes. First time doing this, kind of nervous a little bit, but I've been seeing y'all.
I was nervous the first time I did a YouTube show, so it's totally normal.
Okay, so tonight's Raw, I finally got to see a Raw all the way through from start to finish without having to catch up too much. And that's the reason I haven't been calling in, because I've been trying to DVR it. And I was really interested in that opening segment with Punk and Seth Rollins. Because like the last caller said, I like them both. But when Seth Rollins kind of yanked into Punk a little bit, it made me wonder if it's going to be a double turn. If it could be easily be a double turn to where Punk is the heel, in a way, because he don't think about anything but himself, like Seth said, and Seth has made some good points, and I can kind of see where the fans are kind of, in a way, wanting to turn on him, but then they're like, no, wait, this is Punk. You don't want to turn on him because they're fully behind Seth, from what I'm seeing.
Seth, Chris, is the WWE loyal guy. I mean, not everybody, there's been criticism of Seth's character or lack of character when I was doing Steve Austin's show regularly. People quoted a lot. Steve's like, what is, Seth freaking Rollins? What is it? What does he stand for? What is his character? That came from Steve Austin, none other than Steve Austin, who was questioning, and this was early on when Seth was, breaking away from the Shield and a top guy. But he's a guy who stood up to or got into it with Will Ospreay on Twitter. He's been a staunch WWE defender, representing the brand, the company in social media. And I think, that works for some fans, works against some fans. WWE is a hot product right now. Fans are liking what they're doing. WWE is doing some of their best work they've ever done lately. And so Seth's in a good position to be that guy. And Punk is a guy who trashed WWE, left, went to AEW, couldn't get along, has a spotty reputation. People love him, but they don't see him as a WWE guy. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of, as I'm talking, I'm just thinking about the timing of turning Punk, and I just think there's co-host Chris as opposed to caller Chris. Co-host Chris, I just think there's so many things for Punk to do as a babyface before they turn him. But I do think, kind of like we're seeing with Damian Priest, where he's basically a babyface, even though he's still a heel. And so you could do something where Punk is sort of heelish, or just sort of unapologetically a prick. And he's positioned against heels, but they lay the groundwork for people to be prepared to boo him once he's done with all his big matches against heels. And I mean, I could see that happening. Co-host Chris, do you think that Punk will have a heel run in the next year or 2 or 3 in WWE, or do you think he kind of rides it out as a babyface because they would be fighting too much of a headwind to turn him?
I think he can at this point. I think this promo is really more an end to their storyline for now, or an explanation for what happened at Money in the Bank, more than they're going to talk about something next week. They immediately moved away with Adam Priest saying Punk not to be at the show next week's Raw in lovely Dayton, Ohio. So I think Punk can turn heel at some point, but I think there's way too much. One, he's still in the honeymoon phase, being still fairly new to WWE, and even he hasn't been there that long due to his injury, so he hasn't been around as much for people to really dislike him. And he can wrestle Drew, he can wrestle other heels that people cheer him against, and even against Rollins, there, WWE really leans into the shades of gray as someone who's put up our babyface matchup. So I think a heel turn is possible, but it's probably a couple years away.
Caller Chris, back to you. Anything else you want to bring up? Oh, I had you muted. Go ahead, Chris. Start over there. I had you muted. Yep, that's right.
But I agree with that to an extent, but the only issue I have with that is it's so hard for me as a fan to condone everything that Punk has done to Drew McIntyre. I want to cheer Drew McIntyre more as a fan than CM Punk after everything he's done to Drew. Even after that one time that in Chicago where Drew beat the crap out of CM Punk, I still want to cheer Drew. And I'm like having to realize, oh wait, he's a heel. I got to boo him because Drew's the heel. But in my mind, I'm like thinking, if I were in Drew's shoes, I'd be doing the same thing Drew would be doing. Same everything, almost the exact same way.
Co-host Chris, what do you think of the idea that some fans are struggling with booing Drew because Punk, playing at his reputation as he can't let anything go. His reaction to anything is out of proportion with the initial offense. It does play into that. It feels sort of deliberate. But I mean, the crowds are still with Punk. But what do you think about the way WWE's trying to perhaps sidestep, or are they trying to sidestep some fans turning against Punk?
I understand caller's Chris's point and could definitely see that side. For me, and CM Punk mentioned it today during the promo, he talked about how Drew mentioned his wife and his dog, and he took that as personal. I think, I not to do an exact parallel, but I saw the Hangman Page promo that AEW put on the internet, and he's talking about, you cheered for Swerve after you broke into my house, and I'm thinking like, yeah, I actually would cheer for the guy that is attacking someone who broke into his house. If someone broke into my house, I have a child in a crib. So if someone broke into my house and and scared my child, yeah, I would do the same thing as he was doing. Taking it back here, I think for some people, myself, and this is kind of one of the things about what makes we can interpret different ways. For me, I can see his side as, you've wronged me in a way, you've disrespected me in a way, you brought in my family. That's outside of what we do here in the ring. That's on a whole different level. And because you've done that, I can't let it go. That's not my personality, because I'm not as angry as CM Punk, and it would deal with things better. But I could understand someone with that personality reacting in that way.
And I do think that they both are enjoying this. I think Seth likes being able to kind of, lean in on something that's this edgy, because I think in his previous few, I don't know. There's just, when you see how Seth reacts on social media, it's not like it's not in his kind of DNA to want to get involved in this kind of thing. And so I think Seth is enjoying every second of this, from a creative standpoint, getting to sink his teeth into this. And I think we saw it tonight. There was an enthusiasm to going down this road. And I say this to set this up. I don't know how Seth and Punk are getting along, how Seth really feels about Punk and all that, but there is a history there. And, they try to play on it. They try to play it up that there's legit issues that Seth has with Punk. And I mean, Seth wasn't alone, obviously, in having issues with Punk. So wherever they are now, and a lot of wrestlers who were leery of Punk have been won over or just think, hey, he's not as bad as he was in AEW, and it's probably because we're a much more professional organization or whatever they tell themselves, to explain why Punk is, or Punk has something to prove now. But I do think that there's a little bit of an edge to what Seth is doing that makes this more entertaining, because you're wondering, I know their history, I know Seth, I know Punk. I feel like there's a little bit of joy in Seth having free reign as the kind of main guy in WWE to say the things that he does about him. And frankly, that's why they're selling Drew also. Drew, is a WWE guy now, and that was the initial angle for them too. So caller Chris, what do you think?
I do agree. I think that they are kind of blurring the lines a little bit. You don't know what's real, what could be real, what could be a shoot, what could be not, because I've seen the same things. You saw the video after CM Punk debuted at last year's Survivor Series. You saw the video of Seth Rollins looking like he was super upset, and you saw that, and so it kind of played into that feud that was never happened. So then you have the same way things Drew. He did the same thing. It kind of blurred the lines a little bit. So I see where they're going. It's just very hard for my common sense to not turn off when I'm watching it. But still, I can see where they're going with it.
Yeah.
So
we got Chris, caller Chris. I'll pause for a sec just to read a couple chat room comments. Let's see. I'll put him back on the screen. Part of the problem is Drew has turned into the cool heel, so fans like him, kind of like MJF. If Punk were doing this against a truly hated heel like Solo, he'd have 100% fan support. Neil says early on, everyone was saying to Drew, let it go, but then he was making good points, leaving the fans confused. And then Arcade Lion says, I can't cheer Drew after taking that family bracelet from Punk. They're clearly trying to get fans on Punk's side, or at least giving fans a reason, even if they are okay with fans choosing sides. I don't think Paul Levesque runs from that. Co-host Chris, do you think Levesque has a problem with creating some ambiguity and letting fans choose, as long as fans are into both wrestlers, or more than both?
Yeah, I think they're more playing for just the big match reaction of, we want these two individuals to wrestle no matter how they got there, or what they do normally, which may be different from what they did last week and what they do next week. I think they want to have several CM Punk main event matches, and he has 2 so far on the docket. Actually, technically 3, if you want to count the fact that him and Cody Rhodes cut some promos before the Royal Rumble. That's something that could be revisited down the line. And so, yeah, I don't think that they really care about that. I just think that right now, the problem with the cool heel is that, people they say things that are funny, they say things that are witty, and people kind of want to hear that, and it kind of takes away from the babyface. But I think that they've, have that element of, talking about family and other things. And also the attack. I mean, the attack that CM Punk just did at Money in the Bank was kind of warranted, because the previous one in Chicago on SmackDown, I believe that was really bad. So they're trading. They both kind of have Drew and Punk both have a kind of a reason to be mad at this point. And really, the hard part is, in other circumstances, they would have already had a match and we would have moved forward. But because I think Punk's not cleared, and I don't know when he will be, they've had to prolong it with run-ins, and that's part of the problem too. This feud really needs to get into the ring and have a match and take it in that direction.
You hope that that this feud gets to the ring, as you just said, Chris, before it feels belabored. We're kind of thinking about Chad Gable and Otis breaking in with Gable. You don't want it to go so long that people kind of lose their peak emotional investment. So hopefully Punk is ready soon. Somebody asked in the chat room, I do not know what the timeline is for Punk to be cleared at this point. So, I'm waiting to see when that, I mean, he says, Adam Pearce said, go home. Let me talk to Drew next week. Stay away. And Punk said, yeah, I'm going to go home and try to get cleared. In other words, be safe and do my workouts and whatever he's doing, PT to get back. Chris, any closing comments for you? I want to be timely with other callers who are in the waiting room.
One more quick thing. The Wyatt 6 videotape promo and stuff like that. How long do y'all think we can keep doing this and dancing around with it before they have to get in the ring and wrestle?
We had a big moment tonight where, we saw the VHS video, and we'll talk about that, I hope, as the show progresses here. But when Adam Pearce went in his office and Bo Dallas just sitting in a chair waiting for him, looking up at him, I think we're getting closer to, well, obviously, they have now entered the traditional WWE universe. Co-host Chris, what do you think of that moment?
A part of me was laughing. I'm like, they're supernatural, so couldn't they also appear on SmackDown, or are they beholden to the WWE draft? I don't know. But, I think that having Bo Dallas show up there actually moves them into being in the ring. But again, I feel like their main person that they've been attacking or against is Chad Gable, who's a clear heel. So they're meant to be baby faces, but they are kind of scary and spooky. So people usually boo those acts. I think they need to, even in the supernatural realm of whatever they're doing, crowd knows whether to cheer or boo them.
Do you think there's a pretty good chance that the Wyatt Six end up being baby faces, at least to start, and that explains going after Gable?
I think so. I just think before it seemed like they were open-ended, attacking multiple people, but it's clear that they're focused on Gable. So he's a heel. So simple wrestling logic 101 makes them baby faces. But, a spooky group of 6 attacking one person isn't really a baby face move.
Or attacking innocent producers.
Yeah, or innocent producers. So they have to be very, very careful, or it just, I think the hard part with these things is having these supernatural characters in this sort of like regular world where everyone else is trying to like fight for titles, and they're appearing with the lights off and with videotapes, all that kind of stuff. They have to be very careful how they walk that line. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting. Caller Chris, do you think the Wyatt Six end up as baby faces or heels?
I'm going to say baby faces, but who knows?
Yeah.
It's like who knows. It's a guessing game, but I'm enjoying the tapes, and don't get me wrong, I'm just excited to see what comes next.
And by the way, Bo's doing a great job with his acting. I think he's like overachieving expectations. Co-host Chris, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's funny because he's someone who isn't really ever put in that position, and maybe it's just the emotional feeling of trying to live on for his brother that might be bringing him in a different realm. But yeah, he's showing a lot that I had never seen him show. It's definitely different than the Bo Leave days.
Very, very. Yep. All right, good. Chris, thanks for calling. You did great. I know you're nervous, but you were great.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, you have a good night.
Thunder looking good.
Oh, and I was gonna point that out. See the Thunder and the poster behind you. The Wolves and the Timberwolves and the Thunder are going to be rivals for years to come. It looks like, and those are two good teams, and they both got knocked off by Dallas. But next year, I think those
go Vikings.
Thank you. Yeah, they practice right down the road from Studio A here in Eagan, Minnesota, where I'm at now, and it's fun driving by and trying to get a peek at the at the players practicing, and some fun, a good young quarterback. We'll see what happens. No more Kirk Cousins to beat up on. All right, thanks, Chris.
You both.
Yep, take care.
Take care.
All right, Kraton, you are next. We're giving you a 3-second warning or longer. We're going to bring you on, Kraton. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging with us. What's in your mind about Raw tonight? You are chill. You are relaxed. I love it.
Yeah, it's well, after the weather we've had down here in North Texas, it goes without saying. But anyway, few quick thoughts I had. Yeah. I know you were alluding to Bronson Reed and how Cole was kind of billing his weight. He actually said, as I recall, well, they said he's at 300, but the others say he's at 360. So I think Cole was saying 300, not 350. But anyway, I think that opening segment
is a big difference if that's true. Yeah, then I misheard.
Oh yes. I think with that opening segment, I know I forget who it was just a moment ago, was mentioning the cool heel. I'm starting to think that CM Punk is going to be that cool heel, kind of in the way Austin was back in the day. I know Austin was, I guess early on, he was seen as doing heel things, but the fans caught on to him. So, like I said, I'm starting to see Punk as more the cool heel, Drew being a straight heel, and Seth, I mean, I don't know where we're going to go, but I guess it would depend on the opponent.
Chris, what do you think of that potential approach, or maybe the theory that that's the approach they're on right now?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think the really question is do they want this to be a three-way feud? I think what Kraton mentioned is very possible if it is a Punk versus McIntyre versus Rollins feud. If it just ends up being a Punk and McIntyre feud and Rollins is doing something else, they may have it more be straight heel, face heel.
Are you fearful, as I am, of a triple threat match? I mean, it can't have Drew against Punk in a three-way to start with Seth. If they do that, it's almost, I mean, it's either a weird booking choice or they're trying to protect Punk from having to do too much in the match. I don't know. What do you think, Chris? Yeah,
I think they can't do that. I think they have to have the very simple, their first match has to be a regular old wrestling match. And then, something happens, they need to have a stipulation. I mean, you could see down the line maybe Seth Rollins, a special referee, potentially down the line, but that's something that could only happen, I think, after. They have to have this first. They haven't had a match yet. They have to have that first match, and after that, they can go in a few different directions.
Yeah.
I think to respond to Chris, I mean, or where you brought up about the triple threat, I think obviously that's going to depend on Punk, but I mean, I don't know if there's been much recent heat between Seth and Drew where it would justify them having their own feud. But even if we are heading towards a triple threat between the three, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they drag it out towards Survivor Series, maybe play it up along those lines. But like I said, that's why Triple H is making the big bucks, and I'm just sitting here in North Texas. So
trying to stay cool. Yeah.
They could play off Drew did say a lot of comments about Seth leading into WrestleMania this year about how, he wasn't a worthy champion. He was worried about Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes and not, worried about being the World Heavyweight Champion. They could play into that potentially. But again, that's taken away from, which I think is their main focus, which is Punk and Drew, to bring Seth too much into it at this point.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird. Speaking of odd heel dynamics, I don't think I would ever thought I'd ever see the day where the Miz was basically in sort of a baby face role, even in a tag team with R-Truth. And I'm like, I'll be honest, it's been so long since I've watched Raw. I honestly forgot that Miz was still around. And that's where he is these days. So I guess we're going to eventually see a Truth and Miz feud further down the mid card.
I was hoping we didn't get to that on this show. Thank you, Kraton. Yeah, we might get. I was thinking, Miz can go away for a while if this team is broken up, or beat wrestling main event matches. I at times have been a defender of Miz, but this stuff with Truth has been bad. And now, are we really going to see, Chris, a heel Miz against babyface Truth feud? Is that the beginning of what we saw tonight?
I think so. I think the reaction to that's WWE, parlance here. Whenever a tag team loses and they cut to the one teammate that didn't get pinned, it's kind of like, I knew this would happen, or I'm frustrated that we lost again. It leads to, a few weeks of them snapping. It's one of those things where I enjoyed Awesome Truth leading up to WrestleMania. It was cool that they got that moment there. That's a big show for them to get a big moment winning the tag team titles. And I thought, okay, they'll have it for about a month and then they'll lose it. And they kept it for a little bit longer. And I think they kind of ran out of steam. So I could definitely see them becoming a feud now. But I mean, Miz is on the A&E Legends program, so maybe they'll keep him a babyface for a couple more weeks.
Yeah. I just have three very quick thoughts for you before we move on. Bronson Reed, I noticed in his match, he was selling. I mean, I saw a lot of action on his left hand, so I'm wondering I mean, so that was kind of interesting that I caught out of that. That was about all I really could say about that his match with Pete Dunne, but it was kind of interesting how that angle played out. And I think with Braun Breaker, I mean, he definitely to me has heel material. I mentioned this with Greg and Brandon the other night after SmackDown, and I'm seeing heel potential just because his lineage. He's Rick Steiner's dad, Scott Steiner's uncle. So I could definitely see see him developing into a monster heel within the company, moving up the card. And I think on that, in the main event, I thought I heard Cole allude to the fact that Dominic had never beaten Ray.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's correct, but I think the result kind of if that's true, that kind of threw that result on heel. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Dom versus Ray blow off either at Survivor Series or even as early as SummerSlam. What are your thoughts on that one?
I think they're going a different direction. I think Ray and Dom has been a means to an end, a vehicle to forward the storyline with Dom and Liv and Rhea and Priest. I think they'll move away from that myself. And once you put the match on TV, a singles and a tag, especially the singles match on short notice, I think that they're agreeing they're kind of in the, as we say, the Saturday night's main event phase of that feud where it's already made its money at the house shows. So now we throw it on NBC for the national casual audience. That's my thinking. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that this match was just sort of a way to progress the storyline featuring Liv and Rhea and give Dominic a reason to be maybe more affectionate towards Liv than he was beforehand because she helped him accomplish a goal that he wasn't able to do. Now that he's done it, he probably won't be as interested in wrestling Rey Mysterio, and Rey Mysterio will do other things. And maybe down the line, a few months later, they could meet again, but I think I'll be on hold for now.
Kraton, what else?
That's it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe out there and everyone affected by the hurricane all around the world.
And heat. Yeah.
Yeah, heat too.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Let's shift to Jason from Australia next. Jason, welcome to the show. What's on your mind about Raw tonight?
Yeah, thanks, Wade and Chris. I thought it was another very, very strong show. Yeah. In relation to Punk and Rollins, to me, I don't think anyone's going to turn heel. I'm just intrigued by two very strong characters. And with Punk and Rollins, I think Rollins' stock has dramatically increased for me. And I think a lot of people, just what his character did at WrestleMania, the sacrifices that he made. And I can see both people, I can see fans really getting behind both of them. And I don't mind if you have to pick. And what you see here is both of them, and CM Punk is a master at this, and Drew McIntyre's become a master at weaving real life situations and then tying it back into the storyline. So you don't really know where it ends or begins. So it always gets back to this World Heavyweight Championship. And Wade, I think from what I'm picking up at you, I think I'm giving Punk a little bit too much credit, but I still believe that with all these legitimate things that he's been peppered with Drew and Seth about his character, I am of the belief that he is more than happy for them to bring this up, and he's encouraging it, because at the end of the day, CM Punk's big battle isn't with Seth or Drew or the Writers or Triple H. It is proving to the people at AEW that he wasn't the problem and that he can take it as long as you're about money. So I believe him and Seth are getting along well backstage, and Punk is edging Seth on to say these type of things. So it's going to lead to a big money feud. It's going to lead to interesting TV. And all that's going to do is raise Punk's stock with the people in WWE, because he's letting them know, I'm prepared to take whatever you can throw at me, and what you believe might be my vulnerabilities, you can go there, because I'm about making money. And he did say that in his opening promo when he came back. He's about making money. And the hill that he wants to die on is that he wasn't the problem in AEW. And this is why Seth and Drew can get away with saying these things about Punk, because he's like, go for it. I'm all in too. So this to me is that's what I like about this. And what I love about Seth's character is I feel like he's toned down the extravagant nature. He's more serious, and we still have to flush out the ramifications of his actions at WrestleMania and Cody winning the championship. And I believe that is still a story that they can get into. And I'm looking forward to them telling that story. So Seth, to me, is the most interesting he's ever been. And I'm loving this interaction now with Punk.
I think you're spot on probably all of that. I mean, there's some things we don't know. I don't know what Seth tells Becky, in private conversations about Punk. But he certainly was a lightning rod and a topic of conversation. But as you said, as I've said in the past, Punk wants to have a really good chapter of his career right now in WWE. He wants to make money, obviously, and he wants to have something he can be proud of, a track record post everything that happened in AEW, everything that happened in his last run with WWE when he was, obviously not happy mentally or physically. There's so many things motivating him right now, but showing up the Young Bucks and Tony Khan and AEW is one of them. And he's doing a great job of it so far. And I do not believe that Punk is showing any upset with what's being said. I think he knows this is business, and he's showing by not reacting in any way and letting this stuff be said, whether it's his choice or not selling it is helping him score points with a lot of people in WWE and off camera. So I don't know. I mean, Chris, I think this is like kind of the best case scenario for Paul Levesque when it comes to bringing CM Punk in, other than the injuries, obviously. And they're trying to make the best of that. But beyond that, and that's a big deal. It's not nothing. But I mean, Punk, I just think, I haven't heard anything bad yet. And I ask around. Doesn't mean there isn't something there I haven't heard. So I just think the professional environment, Punk's motivation, so far so good. And that means they get to have fun. And as Jason talks about, Seth's doing great work. So you can have Seth play up his character. And I often say I'm not for, work shoots. I don't think you should search for a real story to wedge into a wrestling show just because it's real. My stance isn't against injecting reality into storylines. It's just you should make sure that's the best option. I don't think just because it's real, but it's an inferior storyline to something you can make up, but give up, that has no basis in reality, but is a better story. I think you should tell that story instead. But I think this is the best story. It just happens to match with reality. Chris, your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I think that's really, you got to the bottom of it, Wade and Jason. I think the reason why the storyline works is that it doesn't have to be seen on some sort of meta. I watched something 5 years ago, or I focus on anything on the internet level. If you have that knowledge, it's helpful. You may have it at an accelerated level than the average person, but the average person can watch and still see the tension between the two of them, and it's very clear and it's reasonable and it makes sense. And you're looking forward to what they'll do next. I think Punk is very, he's a smart guy. He knows what's happened there. He knows, obviously, he is out of options, really. This may not have been an option down the line. Changes in WWE, changes themselves made that an option. I think he wants to maintain that as long as possible. I think it's a different environment. I think one of the things about WWE compared to AEW, which I hate doing, generally, one of the things is that some of the things that happen on AEW TV wouldn't happen in WWE. On TV, they may happen backstage. They may happen, and you'll hear about it, Wade. But they're not going to happen on TV because that's just not part of the product that they're trying to produce. And so they're going to keep it at a level where, they may say things that are real. They may say things that are few people may get an advantage of knowledge, knowing more than everyone. But the goal, as Jason says, to make money, as much money as possible. And that's really what their focus is on.
By the way, Neil in the chat room says he had a cheap shot at AEW saying there are people on the hard cam side. I didn't even think of it that way, but that now it seems obvious. Yeah, that's kind of funny. Jason, back to you.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah. He just had to say that, so that is lingering in his mind, and that is the battle that he wants to win. But in any event.
But I will just say that's only a cheap shot to people who are following AEW attendance. If you're my parents who are, who watch my dad watches every Raw. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
That's a good point. You don't need to know what that means for it because it didn't cross my mind when he said it, and now it seems obvious. I just thought it was a kind of a weird thing to say, but Punk likes to pull the curtain back a little bit. Oh, there's even people back here. So Yeah, it does. I mean, and I don't even know if I guess it fits the definition of a cheap shot, but I don't know. I mean, it's also true. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's not happening at many AEW, dynamites these days, where there's actually people, the wrestlers are usually not talking to people there other than a camera. Their backs are to the crowd. So, but that's up to AEW to fix. And, they had a good show last Wednesday, so maybe they can build some momentum. Jason, back to you.
So moving on to the Wyatt Six, we found out tonight, and I sort of picked this up earlier as to why they are targeting Chad Gable, because and Bo Dallas, who is doing a great job. I mean, he mentioned something about not there being a master, and Gable has referred to himself as Master Gable. So obviously the reason why Bo has targeted Gable is because Gable didn't appreciate his family. He put himself above the family, whereas Bo Dallas is recruiting people and he's doing it for the right reasons. And also from a real life point of view, which you can tie in, Bo's lost his brother, right, in real life. So he doesn't have the opportunity to appreciate or underappreciate his brother anymore. So Chad Gable doesn't know what he's got, and that is infuriating Bo Dallas. And he doesn't like the way Chad has treated his type of family, and that is why he's targeting him. He's going after him because he doesn't like the way he's treating his family. And Bo's going to do it differently. So there's no doubt that the Wyatt Six are the baby faces in this situation.
Chris, what do you think of the pace at which they're telling the Wyatt Six story, including as it relates to Chad Gable? And what do you think of Jason's assessment of what we're learning about why they targeted Chad?
Yeah, that seems to make a lot of sense to me. And again, that makes them clear baby faces because they're attacking someone who's not respecting others, not treating his family right. I think the pace is good so far, but eventually you have to get into sort of the regular cadence of the show with everyone else. And my impression or my thought is that Bo Dallas being in Adam Pearce's office, as tough job being the Raw general manager. I don't, it's hope they pay well, but will lead to them actually being in the ring. But to me, I feel like for this to go forward in the right way, like he has to challenge Chad Gable to a match, and maybe that leads to they had the Easter egg, which have had a few weeks of Chad Gable talking to the Creed brothers and Ivy Nile, I believe, when it was Sonya Deville, Zoe Stark, and Shayna Baszler cutting their promo. They were in the background, so they've teased that a few times. I think it's about time that they actually go to that. Maybe they have a Bo Dallas Chad Gable match so they can bring all these people out and they can actually get into the meat of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that'll be a fitting. It'll be a good fit of Gable and the Creeds, and I'm looking forward to the next stage. Jason, back to you.
In relation to Damian Priest, I'm a big fan of Damian Priest, and I've been more of a fan of his title run than maybe others. I get the criticism, but I feel like where it may not be a benefit to him too much is they're doing a slow babyface burn with him. Thus, that might not come across as if he's having a strong title run, but I like the story they're telling with him. I like the promo package that obviously the one that Gunther did was just tremendous. I mean, that was just tremendous the way he went through his career and his purpose behind being a professional wrestler and what he wants to get out of the sport. But Damian Priest, this was almost like a rehabilitation type of package to say, look, all these other people that have won championships in a certain way. Don't blame me. I'm not the reason for the way the lay of the land is. It's almost like I come across as don't hate the player, hate the game type of thing. And he's just adapting to the way the environment is. And then I also like the fact that they sort of addressed it without directly addressing it, the fact that a mistake was made, that he maybe was a bit lucky. But him and Seth had a little backstage moment. And I like that because they both came out strong. And I just think with Damian Priest, like I said, I'm a fan of his look and what he brings to the table. And it's unfortunate they had that thing that happened in the match. But I think moving forward, this is a tough one, Chris and Wade, because he's obviously got something there, but how do you position him as a babyface moving forward? I'm very intrigued with this whole Judgment Day situation. Obviously, I feel like they're going to move towards a Damian Finn type of feud. But if you're going to push him as a babyface and as this sort of respectful person who's willing to do things on his own, how do you get the most out of that so he's getting the most positive reaction he can out of the fans without them sort of being ho-hum to him? I feel like he's in a very tricky situation here.
What do you think of that, Chris?
I think the easiest way, which again is hard because Gunther wouldn't need this, but you have to have the Judgment Day screw him out of the title. Maybe the not knowing about Rhea, not thinking that he's part of the group. They had their moments before where they teased kicking people out, or when him and Balor were fighting a lot more. I think they need to have. I think in wrestling, or how I've always seen it, for someone to become a heel, to become a babyface, they have to have a greater heel. That someone is either they get screwed over, or someone is just more evil than them, for people to rally behind the person that they may not have always rallied against, because now they have a new challenge that they can speak to. So I think that would be the best way for him to become a babyface, would be the Judgment Day to cost him the world title after he held it for a while and had gone through a lot of other challenges.
And Jason, I just think the way Priest handled Seth tonight, and like, hey, we had an agreement, but I'm not going to hold you to it. That wasn't, the way things played out. It's not the way that we wanted it to. And so when I take care of Gunther, then I'll give you a title shot. And I thought it was. I mean, I just think Priest is coming across as a stand-up guy. Again, when he turns babyface, he's not going to be a main event guy. I mean, I don't think he's exceeded expectations in the ring, or I think he's in the range of what people thought he could do, which isn't, I don't think he's surprising people with great performances. There's mistakes in his matches. You can tell he's kind of beating himself up for it. When there's a botch move or he forgets to kick out, which is what happened at Money in the Bank, just kind of, just missed his cue essentially. But I think people are going to be into him. I mean, I think they're setting him up to be a good kind of top of the second tier babyface, and I think that's good. He's getting a run that I doubt he expected a year ago, especially 2 years ago, that he'd be getting right now. Jason, back to you.
I'm intrigued by his match with Gunther, how it plays out. I mean, I'm not the biggest person when it comes to so-called great matches or whatnot. As long as people are half decent in the ring and they're not dropping people on their heads, that's all I particularly care about, to be honest with you. So sure, Damian, for me, is more than good enough in the ring, but it's going to be interesting to see how he goes against Gunther, and if they do put the championship on Gunther, because Gunther is championship wrestler. When you think of a wrestler, he is like the model of championship wrestler. So I'm intrigued by this matchup. And just one quick note before I go, just on a completely different topic. One of the benefits of having this smaller set is that, to me, the wrestlers come across more larger than what they had before. I always hated the larger screen, the big screen, because when the wrestlers would come out, they frame him on the camera. It's like your eyes are distracted by all the colors of the big screen, this massive screen they had, and the wrestlers come across very tiny. I love this smaller screen because I just feel like the wrestlers come across larger, and because they don't have all that color distracting them in the background. So yes, Triple H has said we want to incorporate the smaller set to, get more fans in, but I think they just come across more larger than life on screen, as opposed to having this massive screen in the background would always come across like this tiny figure that's been lost, sort of lost in the actual image. Have you noticed that, Wade and Chris?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, I don't agree with the negatives that you give out. I understand you saying that, but to me, it just makes the events feel big, and there's plenty of time to make the wrestlers feel big. But I'll look at it through the lens that you are next time, with the bigger set, and kind of see, because it just seems like we'll see kind of both shots. Chris, what do you think of the way they're shooting ring entrances now versus all kinds of past examples?
Yeah, it does make them seem still larger than life, or maybe I would say relatable, but you kind of see them a little bit better, especially since this is just it is a Raw. It's not a Dome pay-per-view, and I think you need to separate what the Dome pay-per-view visual, WrestleMania or Royal Rumble, I guess also even SummerSlam's now in a stadium in Cleveland, from what you get from a regular old TV show. But so yes, I think it's better to do it this way, to have that differentiation.
Jason,
go ahead.
Well,
the reason I bring that up, I mean, I grew up on late 80s, early 90s WWF, right? And they always came out, they had that minimal set. They almost just came through the black curtain, right? And to me, they just always seemed like larger than life, because it's almost like their body took up the whole screen. So it made him come across larger. Whereas opposed when they've got this massive screen in the background, it's too distracting. They come across too small to me. I mean, this might be something that other people haven't thought about. Or you think it's not really a big deal. But to me, the way you frame your wrestlers and how you present them is everything, because you are trying to present them more larger than life. But just quickly, in relation to the Judgment Day, like you, Wade, I love the Judgment Day interactions. I get a big kick out of Carlito saying that's cool at inappropriate times, and then JD shutting them down. I would like that to happen week by week. I think he's been a fun little addition to the Judgment Day, and just moving forward with Rhea and Liv. I mean, am I the only one that's thinking that Dom's going to end up falling for Liv, and it's going to cause an issue here that eventually what she wants to do is going to pay off, and then she might end up dumping Dom straight away because she used him to get to Rhea? I think this is very intriguing, and this is really like a real life situation, because, you know, you've heard of this before where the woman is just using the man to get back at the other woman, and then the man ends up getting his heart broken. So, you know, I don't know if this is going to turn Dom babyface or whatnot, but I think they're managing to tell like a real life sort of soap opera story and incorporating it nicely into the show.
Yeah, early in the show, I said I think that this can go multiple directions, and I think they're leaving it up to viewers to speculate, as you are. You know, is Dom going to end up falling for Liv? I mean, Liv helped Dom beat his dad for the first time. He also seemed a little grossed out by his head being near her crutch when he fell that way. But he also seemed like he was about to maybe feel a romantic moment to kiss her before Rhea Ripley came back. There's so many directions they can go with this. It's fun. I mean, they're having fun with it. You talk about Judgment Day being fun. I threw this up on the screen for YouTube viewers. You know, when Balor and Day are peeking in, looking at what Liv is doing to Dom, stretching him with her head near his crotch, and Carlito and Damian had their reactions. And I mean, everybody's having a lot of fun with this, but in a way that's true to characters. It doesn't feel like it's some clubhouse thing that they're all laughing out. You know, it's not secret handshake wrestling booking. It's the viewers are in on this. They see everything that's happening, and they get each individual wrestler's reaction. And I'm not ruling out at all that Dom falls for Liv. I mean, at all. I think there's a very good chance they could become a heel power couple. But I love that Liv went into it with one intention, which is just trying to steal Dom for the sake of getting at Rhea. But they end up genuinely falling for each other. And then, yes, it could lead to Dom turning babyface if Liv is controlling and abusive and mean. And I mean, people love booing Dom. Chris, I see a babyface future for Dom also. I do. I don't think he's a lifelong heel. I think he can end up with a big babyface pop someday.
I think especially in a wrestling crowd that's male dominated, that will always give the man the benefit of the doubt against a woman who's they see treating him well. That will make a man a babyface immediately, you know, due to the large majority of people who watch wrestling. Yep. But I think the storyline again took a big turn this week, because all the whatever Liv her flirting with him and all those sorts of things, really she gave Dom something that Rhea never did, which is a victory over.
Wait, what are we talking about?
A victory.
Never mind. Oh, okay.
I'm talking about in the ring, in the wrestling.
You know
ring,
more than I knew. If you were,
which is I do not. Which is a victory over his dad, who, you know,
got it. All right.
Long storyline, and the dad always beat the son, and you know, Rhea helped him achieve that, and that's not Liv helped him achieve that, and that's not something that Rhea would do. Plus, I think at this point, it's more important for them to turn Rhea babyface, which means they would have to be heel for a while. And then down the line, they could make Dom a babyface after, you know, they could reunite them in a year, and everyone they could do the wedding like Macho Man and Elizabeth from SummerSlam '91.
All right, Jason, anything else for us? Jason, you're muted.
Thanks, Chris. Nice hearing from you, Chris. All right, guys, all the best.
All right, take care.
Great, thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Always good hearing from you. All right, let's go next to Root Dog. Hendrick, no longer from Portland. Hendrick, welcome. What have you got for us tonight?
That's correct, and nice to talk to you, Wade. Nice to talk to you, Christopher. I enjoy Wrestling Coast to Coast podcast. I've been called in before talking about Prestige Wrestling when I used to live in Portland. So good to see you.
Good to see you as well. I think we're going to try to cover one. I think one of their shows is going to be on YouTube in a couple of weeks. I think we're going to try to cover that.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Cool. Well, so the John Cena retirement tour just started, and I'm already starting to find it a little insufferable. I mean, he wasn't even there tonight, but he's, now called the greatest of all time. CM Punk even was kissing up to him. This seemingly isn't going to end anytime soon. How do you feel so far about this? And are there even any matches you want to see John Cena wrestle anymore?
Well, there's hope that John Cena gets booed again if they make this retirement tour insufferable. If you've missed John Cena being booed and this generation of fans embracing him, Chris, what do you think? I mean, Cole's been calling John Cena the GOAT for a while, so that isn't new. But I mean, I think Cena's insufferable is overstating it, but I mean, just comes across as syrupy and phony and awkward. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but he's been really good at what he does for a long time. I'm sorry, John, I'm hurting your feelings, but he's been really, really good at what he does. Successful in a lot of ways. But obviously when you have a huge part of your demographic booing you for years, that and the miscalculation of Roman's push is what set the stage for AEW to exist. So in some ways, Cena, we can thank Cena perhaps for AEW, because if Cena wasn't such a goof, and male fans didn't hate him so much for so long, but people paid to boo him. So, you have that going for you. It's not ideal. Anyway, Chris, what do you think of the retirement announcement? And do you think a lot of people are going to be like Rude Dog and thinking pretty early on, this is not going to be fun? I mean, hopefully he goes away till January. We don't, they don't talk about his retirement tour with a countdown clock, for the next 6 months.
I think what's weird with me with John Cena is, they showed that highlight package of him and like he's wearing the same clothes from 25 years ago, which is like, I'm not, John Cena's a few years older than me. I'm not wearing the same clothes from 25 years ago, even someone who keeps clothes for far too long, or the same style. So that's, to me, is different. I think it's fine, provided it's in short doses. He mentioned he's going to be at Royal Rumble, which, that actually seeing him in the Rumble might be an intriguing thing, because there could be a storyline. Can John Cena, win the title one last time, him being in the Rumble? Someone could eliminate him. There could be a feud there. I think the two people that, as much as people may hate me saying this, the two people that I want to see him wrestle are CM Punk and Randy Orton. I know he wrestled Randy Orton a lot, but that was one of his main opponents. Another person I'd like to see him wrestle, which I don't think will happen, is Edge. Because obviously he's in AEW now, but those are three of his main opponents that are still wrestling. I remember seeing him wrestle in Madison Square Garden against Rusev. He had a lot of great matches with Rusev.
For sure.
That also won't happen. But I think for me, he can't come back too much because, again, the picture you just put up, Wade, shows it. I mean, he's got a ball spot now, and he's dressing like he's going to be going to the skater park. And but I know one person who's very excited that he's on this tour, and that's Rich Fan. And I can guarantee you him and his son will be, if he comes anywhere near Pittsburgh, they'll be there.
And that's the thing. I mean, Cena has a huge fan base, and people grew up watching him. And, I sort of thought people who were fans of John Cena and New Day when they were 8, 9, 10 would grow out of it and be embarrassed about it. But instead, people are nostalgic for it. And again, John had, on the VIP side of things, for VIP members, Patreon supporters, we run our 18 years ago podcasts almost every day. And it's at the time when John Cena's taking off. This whole stretch of time, it's been fun listening back to the journey that Cena's been on. And you can read about our coverage in the back issues as a VIP member too, if you're a full VIP member. Early on, nobody thought he was going to have the career he had. He was just sort of like, there was some talent there, but it's like his matches aren't good enough. His promos are corny. He's not a good enough athlete, whatever. He doesn't have the pedigree. And he just managed to, obviously it took Vince McMahon pushing him, but he delivered in the ring and on the mic, and fans were, guys were booing him, and he took it. He absorbed those blows, and he kept going forward because women, but especially kids, loved him. And I wrote this when I posted the story on PWTorch.com, our website, when Cena announced his retirement. Cena, I believe, was a stabilizing force that gave a face of the company that WWE needed coming out of a lot of scandals and bad publicity from the Chris Benoit situation, drug deaths, the Attitude Era. It just became advertiser and corporate friendly, and Cena was a big part of that. So, I don't know. He's a weird guy in a lot of ways, kind of goof and all that. And there's a chance, Rutok, people are gonna get bored with him and tired of the push. But I do think, though, I think we'll move on. Honestly, after this week, there'll be a lot of publicity, and we won't hear a lot about him until late in the year, probably next year. And then, by the way, Greg Parks and I on the flagship tomorrow will be doing an extended conversation about Cena. I want to stay focused on, getting through Raw tonight, but we're definitely going to talk about John Cena tomorrow.
Okay. I still would like to know one name you would like to see him face on his retirement tour.
I'm saving that for. I not to disrespect you. I'm saving that for tomorrow because I actually want to put more thought into a short list for me. And I get the best of with like Orton and stuff, but I don't think Orton and Edge and who else did you say, Chris?
I said CM Punk.
Oh yeah, Punk could be fun. Yeah, he might. I mean, that could be fun. I'll save it for the flagship tomorrow. Search Wade Keller, everybody, if you're a YouTube person but not a podcaster, and we'll talk about it. Go ahead, Rudon.
Okay. Well,
sorry.
It's fine. Well, the next wrestling event I have a ticket for is Josh Barnett's Bloodsport in Brooklyn. Yeah. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because they have 3 Raw wrestlers that is scheduled to be on the card, which is both the Creed brothers and Shayna Baszler. So what do you think about WWE working with other promotions, like especially like more underground indies like Bloodsport?
Chris, I'll throw to you on that because that's an area that fits your podcast.
Yeah, as someone that covers independent wrestling, I'm not sure if we're going to cover that Bloodsport show. I'll talk to Justin about that. I think it's great. I think one of the things that's great about independent wrestling is you have different people from different spaces wrestling in different locations that they wouldn't do normally. And WWE, between working with TNA and having wrestlers in this very unique environment, I mean, Bloodsport is sort of, they're trying to take it back to like the Japanese UWFI shoot fighting, grappling type deal, which isn't for everyone. But I like to see, I hope the Creeds are officially with Chad Gable before that match to maybe give them a bit more of a purpose with inside Raw before they're there. Obviously, Shayna Baszler's a known. She wrestled, I believe, wrestled in the UFC, so she's a bit of more of a known character. But yeah, I think it's great. I think for wrestling fans who want to explore different types of wrestling, it's great to see these wrestlers be able to be in these different promotions and do different things. Also, AJ Styles is in Japan wrestling like Marufuji for Noah. Io Sky is going to Marigold. So, I think it's really good that they're able to let their wrestlers do different things.
Cool, Rudon. What else?
Well, I mean, so Wade, I'd like to ask your opinion. Like, what does this do for WWE to have like these, established stars like be in other promotions?
I don't think it does. I don't think it does a lot for them, to be honest. But I also don't think it hurts them. And if the wrestlers want to do it, I think Paul Levesque likes scoring points with the ardent fan who is always calling for cooperation. Paul Levesque's a little bit older than me, but he grew up reading the wrestling magazines, and they always talked about, a true world champion should defend around the world. And they ranked the NWA and AWA champions higher than the WWF champion in their magazines because the WWF world champion only defended in the WWF, and world champion should leave their organization and travel the world. He's from that era where fans growing up valued wrestlers doing that thing. The cynical view is they want to avoid, anti-competitive accusations, and that they want to show that their wrestlers should be classified as independent contractors, so they don't have to hire them as employees, and that they are willing to let them go do other things. Because, I mean, it's, the spirit of independent contractor doesn't mean you only wrestle for WWE and you're not allowed to go anywhere else. You're putting wrestlers at risk by letting them go other places, both from reputation, how their book standpoint, but also suffering an injury. Tony Khan has run into that where some contracted wrestlers work indie shows, they get injured. And it's like, now I got to pay for your surgery and it wasn't on my show, that kind of thing. So there's logistics. So the cynical side is it's to show their wrestlers really are independent contractors. The other cynical side is he wants to babyface the internet and social media audience. But it also could just be wanting to show he's different than Vince McMahon and that WWE is a kind of this worldwide organization that wants to make friends with everybody. But that's what Vince McMahon did in the early 80s. He was showing footage of all these territories on his own TV show. And people are like, oh, how nice. He's helping our wrestlers become bigger stars. And then what did he do? He made them offers and recruited those wrestlers to be his wrestlers. So it turned out, the old Twilight Zone episode, How to Serve Man. Sometimes things can look one way and turn out another.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is happening with this whole Joe Henry thing. Like, they keep popping him up. I think they're like gonna just snatch him, and he's gonna be a part of NXT. But anywho,
yeah. All right. Anything else for us?
All right. One last thing, and then I'll take off. So I was listening to the Kick Ash podcast today. Shout out to Ashley in Orlando, and she was comparing WWE right now to AEW, like a few years back when all these like great talent came in, and like it was basically an embarrassment of riches, which might be what's going on with WWE right now. And I kind of agree with that. Do you think that might be a thing? And maybe there's some people that just because there's so much talent that is like being undervalued, and like, if so, maybe who might they be?
You're asking who's undervalued in WWE?
Yes.
Man, these are like flagship questions. I'm prepared to talk about Raw. I'm
talking about Raw. I'm sorry.
Well, it's a little sneaky. I know it's a type of question I want to put some thought into. And the reason, again, it's not punting on it. Well, it is punting on it, but I don't think there's anybody who I think is being underutilized. Like, no one comes to mind. I don't watch the show and go, why isn't she getting pushed more? Why isn't he getting pushed more? I think Paul Levesque's really good at pushing people who seem like they deserve the pushes that they're getting. And, Priest is getting a chance, and I think it's smart. Like Priest, for example, somebody who's getting pushed above what people would have expected, but it makes everybody else fresher as a result. Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair in the tag division. So that freshens up them for when they return to the singles division. I don't know. I mean, I think he's getting a lot out of JD McDonough. I think he's getting, you could say maybe Dragon Lee, it's been a start and stop push for him, but I don't know. Chris, who comes to mind for you? And I'll keep thinking about it.
Yeah, Dragon Lee was one person. I think these questions are always difficult because in every wrestling company ever, there's always been someone would think, oh, that person should be winning more, just because everyone can't win. There are only so many hours. There's only so many hours of shows they have. When they have a 3-hour show, everyone can't still be on the show. One person, it's kind of a weird to say her, because I was kind of hoping she would win Money in the Bank, and she didn't. So I'm hoping there's some continued character development for her. Is Chelsea Green, because I feel like they kind of got the ha-ha part, but they haven't got her maybe over as a serious contender yet. So maybe I'll say her.
Rude Dog, you asked questions. Is there anyone who comes to mind, in your opinion?
Well, the first person I thought of, actually, even though he's a tag team champion, is Finn Balor. Like, I've been a huge Prince Devitt fan when he was in New Japan and in the UK, and to see him now, just kind of being goofy, it's fine. When he did that whole head pop-in thing, it felt like something, this will date myself, but out of Three's Company or the Brady Bunch or something, and it was just okay. If I had this guy on my roster, he'd be a little more higher up, but whatever. He's still on TV and he's a tag team champion, even though those don't seem to mean a whole heck of a lot right now. So that would be my first one, but I'm sure there's more.
By the way, everybody who's watching us on Twitter, if you jump over to our YouTube channel and watch live, you can see the chat room react to what we're saying, and they're giving their thoughts on some of Rude Dog's topics here. So it's cool you're joining us on Twitter, but feel free to jump over to youtube.com/PWTorch if you want the kind of the full interactive experience. Rude Dog, anything else real quick before we move on?
No, they'll do it. Hopefully they're not bearing me. Love you guys. Have a good night.
Yep, take care. No one's bearing you. Take care. Always good to talk to you. Good question.
Thank you. I should interject. I did get a message from Sean Radican, contributor to the Torch, and now full-fledged member of the Yoshihashi agenda, that he thinks that the reason why the wrestlers are in Japan is so that WWE can get a foothold there, which makes sense. I know they tried to do that. They tried to do NXT Japan before the pandemic, so sending wrestlers who have names in Japan to wrestle on these shows could help. I could see them, that'd be a reason for that as well.
Yeah, a little bit of the Vince McMahon early 80s strategy of show all the stars from other territories, but you're actually doing it for selfish purposes, not magnanimous purposes. All right, Sean from Murfreesboro, you are closing out the video color portion of the show, and then we'll zip through some emails because it's getting late. I wanted to be wrapped up earlier than this, but Raw gives us so much to talk about, and our callers have good questions, and Chris has good analysis, and the chat room keeps us entertained, and it's fun doing this show. So it always goes longer than I plan. Sean, welcome. What's up?
Well, again, a lot of pressure, Wade, because it's getting late and making me rush. It's okay, though. Yeah. It's okay. It's all right. Wade, first, I miss the mosquitoes. You slapping the mosquitoes. I do kind of miss that. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm glad. I'm glad I'm back in civilization, and I don't have to. I literally have a net that I wear over my head, like when I take my dog down to the lake to dive in and swim for sticks. And it's not nearly as bad here back in the Twin Cities, so it's worth it. But yeah, they're not getting in this room.
No, it's good. And Chris, man, it's good to see you on here. I was waiting for Wade. I knew he was going to get you on at some point, but I'm glad he did, man. It's good to see you on here. Always fun talking with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, a lot of good calls, a lot of stuff to talk about. But I do want to talk about Seth, Drew, and Punk real fast. As far as when Seth was bringing up all his points, and he was bringing up good points. I like the serious tone of coming back at Punk and saying it's all about you. That's all you think about is you. But when he was talking about, he's talking about Drew. I thought it was fine for Drew to cash in, but do you not realize all the things Drew's done to you the last 6 months? It's just like that's just okay with you, and you're just over that all of a sudden. And if you had the title and he did that to you, I don't think you would care for it much. So I don't know, or just the fact he was okay with that, and just I know he's mad at Punk and he's like the vitriol's at Punk, and he, storyline doesn't like Punk, but Drew's kind of been a jerk heel to him in a lot of ways too. So it was weird that he just left that out. Was that weird to you guys when you were listening to it? I thought it was good. It wasn't bad. It's funny he just left all that out and just forgot that Drew had done all that stuff to him for the last 3 months.
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think part of it was he wants to sort of focus on CM Punk and his anger towards him, and that, because Seth, part of it, I guess, is like, well, I'm Seth Rollins. I cashed Money in the Bank at WrestleMania, so I really can't get upset about someone cashing it on me because I've done it before and it's been done on me. So it's one of the reasons why I don't like Money in the Bank. It's kind of, I'm glad they did this, by the way, to kind of get rid of it, so you don't have to. Every week someone won't call in and ask Wade, will they cash in this week or next week or at the paper?
Yeah.
But I do get your point. It is kind of ridiculous, but again, I think he actually hates CM Punk for some of the same reasons, because he's almost singularly focused on Punk in a way that he's mad that Punk was singularly focused on Drew.
Someone in the chat room said it was ironic that Seth was talking about Punk being all about him when he does the same thing, music and clothing.
That's true too.
Neil saying that. I mean, there's some inconsistencies and holes in how everybody is acting. I mean, Drew doesn't have to act in anyway because he's a heel. He can be a hypocrite. He's not forgetting anything. Punk kind of, Punk is unapologetic in everything that he's doing. He's just like, I'm going to cost Drew the title, and there's nothing. I'm not going to apologize for that. the stuff with Seth in the triple threat match, I mean, it draws attention to sort of the absurdity of that rule, which I harp on a lot. But I just think
and you should.
Triple threat match. I mean, every time Michael Cole goes, well, it's triple threat, so there's no rules. Every time something absurd happens, it just makes a mockery of everything. So triple threat matches should become elimination matches. If you get DQ'd, you're out. It becomes a one-on-one match. I know it's a little more challenging to book that because then you have to do 2 finishes essentially. But you put wrestlers in a tough position because it's like, oh, I don't blame Drew for cashing in because he won Money in the Bank. And that's legal to do. And Punk, I know you've got an issue with him. It just, there was a lot for Seth to have to steer through and rationalize. And Damian Priest, came out of it with a title. So I guess he can just feel fine, but he didn't really get to prove anything. He didn't get the satisfying win that he wanted. So anyway, Sean, back to you. You can react to that or steer to a different topic.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just wanted to bring that up because it was weird to me as he was talking about, just kind of forgetting about all the stuff Drew had done to him. And it's just like, well, yeah, you had the hatred toward Punk. And I loved Seth's promo. He was serious. He was fiery.
Yeah.
I love when Seth gets down to business and Punk's like, I'm getting in Drew's business. And Seth's like, I'm going to get in your business. It was all good stuff all around. But that loophole was just funny to me as I was listening to it. And going back to the Dragunov Breaker, I want to talk about that match. We haven't really talked about the match at all. The match, again, they wrestled again, which I was like, they went into it, I was leery because I'm like, well, I don't want Ilya to lose again, but at the same time, I still want clean finishes. And if the finish is going to be clean and they're going to have a really good 10-minute match, 12-minute match, and Dragunov still gets shine and he still looks good, and the Cole and McAfee are putting him over strong, like I can live with it. And they just had a stupid finish. Breaker hit it, throwing a chair at him. And so I wanted to hear your thought about that. And where do you think is Dragunov still in a good spot? And then I like when, they're emphasizing Breaker in the fact that he's really fast, which they're doing that with him and Strowman, which is, again, kind of weird. But they're going to that tall shot when they're going around the ring and he's running and spearing Sammy. That's going to get a little old after time. Like right now it's fine because they're putting him over, but he has to have more, again, of a move set and show up, which he did in the match. Like the match was okay, but I wanted to hear what you thought about Breaker and, is that going to get a little old over time? It looks fun now, but it could get a little old.
I'm glad they did. Well, I shouldn't say I'm glad. I understand the rationale for not doing a straight up finish in that match because Braun can't lose, but you don't want Dragunov to become.
But why do it? But why have the match though?
Well, that's the challenge of booking 5 hours of TV every, primetime cable TV every week, 52 weeks a year. It's easy for us to critique. It doesn't mean our critiques aren't wrong and that we're not right when we complain about non-finishes. But it is easier from our chair than Paul Levesque's with all the things he's trying to account for. And he makes choices. And I would opt for doing more finishes for sure, more decisive, clean finishes. But in the way things are set up, Ilya Dragunov is not going to get a lot of chances to get meaningful wins on television because everything on Raw and SmackDown is storyline oriented. And they could. And really, that is a strategy. Just get Dragunov in a position where he can get more wins. I still think main event. Speaking of that, the third show is underutilized in that way. They could be giving Dragunov meaningful wins and air it on their main event TV show, but then show highlights of that on Raw to go, hey, Dragunov's on a hot streak. 3 weeks in a row, he's beaten this guy, this guy, this guy. There are people you can sacrifice. It's no big deal. And now he's got some wins. So then when you have him against Breaker, he can lose. And it's not like all we see is Dragunov lose. So they could build up the record a little bit. AEW tried to do that with AEW Dark, and it was kind of flimsy because the matches are so lopsided. But give Dragunov some good opponents. Have Dragunov, beat Karrion Kross or something, on main event. Doesn't hurt Kross and what he's doing. So just grabbing around him. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I believe that was the only non-clean finish on the show. I actually have become more of a fan of these type of finishes done rarely, just because you end up protecting the person. Because again, if Dragunov had just lost, he'd be in a worse position than losing in the way. I do agree with you, Sean, that I never understood just wrestling a match and then for some reason just throwing a chair at your opponent. It's like, doesn't really make any sense. It may have been another way to DQ him, but I think it's better for Dragunov if he's not in a feud right now. He's kind of being a stand-up guy, standing up for Sami Zayn, being attacked. This is kind of the best way for him to go in that regard. And again, if you had a show of, I can't remember how many matches were on Raw. Maybe there were 6. Did whip my head? I think maybe there were 5. If half of them had DQ finishes, that would be an issue. One of them out of 5 or 6 to me is not too bad. And I think occasionally it's helpful to do these type of finishes so that you don't just have certain people lose all the time. In the long run, it's better for them not to lose too much.
Yeah, and going back to the SummerSlam, or where they're going for SummerSlam, because Brock just brought up, they're making Braun out to be an unhinged beast, but he just lost clean at Money in the Bank, and so I wasn't a fan of that, honestly. I just think if you're going to have Braun be a big star, just have him get a big win. But I'm assuming they're going to SummerSlam in either a triple threat or, do they put Dragunov in the match and make it a triple threat with him? Or I would just do Braun Sami. I just thought Braun was going to get the rematch with Sami at SummerSlam and just have Braun win. But then it's Dragunov's got a beef with Braun, and then you had Kaiser, in the beef. It's are they just going to – how many people do you think they're going to put in the match? Because I don't want that many people in it. But I feel like that's where they're going. I'm kind of leery that's where they might be going.
I'm glad that they just had Breakker admit, hey, I lost and I shouldn't get a rematch. I just love that got acknowledged. Because I was talking about that on the VIP Roundtable podcast after Money in the Bank. If they're going to a rematch, how do you justify that? And so with what Breakker did to Sami, you could see, and what he did to Dragunov, you can kind of see, okay, Sami's going to be it's the old thing that's been around forever. The babyface demands the match. And Pearce gives in. And then, but I don't even know that Breakker's necessarily going to win the Intercontinental title. I mean, they could tell the story with Sami being not a giant killer, but the falsely framed underdog who keeps winning. So I don't know. I mean, I think they're telling a story that leaves it open for either way. Sami has momentum. He's confident. He's declaring he's not an underdog. That'll make it all the more sad for Sami fans if Breakker beats him clean, especially. I'm not against that. If they're ready to go that way with Breakker, but maybe they find a way to steer Breakker away from the IC title for now and continue with Sami. Whether he gets a rematch or not, he might still come up short if he gets one, and that sends him on a rampage against whoever he blames for it or whoever he wants to take out next. So I think there's an array of directions they can go. Chris, where do you think they're going with Sami Braun?
I think they are going to go to a rematch because I just don't know of any other opponents that are really apparent for Sami Zayn. I think, in my mind, and again, I think about this just because on our show, Wrestling Coast to Coast, we talk a lot about finishes and what they could or couldn't lead to. I think it would have been better to have kind of Sami Zayn win by maybe a roll up or something, not some kind of quick flash pin where it looked like Breakker was maybe misjudged him or wasn't serious enough, and then this leads to another match where the same thing happens, but it's okay, Sami Zayn kind of got one over on him. Can he beat him again with Braun Breakker fully focused? But I think just because I don't know, outside of them doing some sort of wacky tournament or battle royal, I don't know who there would be a better opponent for Sami Zayn at SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, back to you.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see what they do there. Again, it was exciting having Rhea back tonight. That was great. Gunther, like Jason said, the video package on him was just fantastic. I miss Gunther so much.
That was a great video package.
I know, and it just shows how much you miss him being on TV. It seems like it's been forever, and he's just, oh man. And it showed, like you were saying, Wade, I think a while back, at how much weight he has lost. Man, he looks good now compared to what no offense to what he was then, and he was still great what he was doing before, but man, he just looks so good now, and it's fun to see what he's going to continue to do. And Chris, I don't think you can have them turn on Priest during the match. You can't do that. Gunther's got to win strong. Either you turn on him after the match or you turn on him the next week on Raw. You can't do it during the match. It's just, I just think that would be, you could do that. I just think it would be a mistake. And so
it's a super interesting choice how committed they are to keeping Priest strong. Cause I'm not ruling out Gunther doesn't just plow through Priest. And, maybe there's a storyline that Priest has been stressed out, distracted, whatever. But I mean, I think Gunther should have a strong, decisive, clean win to start his title reign. And I think Priest has a storyline to fall back on. If it's Priest and Rhea against Dom and Liv or whatever, it doesn't matter whether he wins or loses.
Yeah, I think the question really is, in the booking is, are they more focused on Gunther winning in a way to make him a powerful champion, or sympathy for Priest?
Story with Priest, yeah.
And what happens to him next? I think that's, a lot of booking is a decision you make. Only because to me, if you're focused on Priest, him like being attacked by the Judgment Day for like losing the title like a week after is not as strong for him as them costing him the title. But then again, that would make Gunther's title victory weaker, and I think that's a priority for them. So I guess we'll see on April 3rd, 2nd. What is it?
August, yeah.
August?
Yeah.
August. I was in the time machine back to
August. It goes too fast.
Late. It's late.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Sean, anything else, any other one or two quick items you want to get to?
So I was going to ask you real quick about the stuff with Sonya officially getting with Zoe and Shayna. I mean, obviously they can't be a trio because there's no trios titles. Please, WWE, don't ever do that. Please. Where do you think they're going? Like, do you think there's something really cool that they could do with them? I like what they could be. I mean, if they really push it, I think it could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's pro wrestling. I always think when someone gets added to a faction, it's to set up a turn down the line at some point. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I don't have strong feelings on it. I think it doesn't not make sense that they would have a reason to align. Two of them can team up and the other can go on singles matches. They can obviously do 3-on-3 matches along the way. Chris, do you have any strong feelings, pro, con, or otherwise on this?
Yeah, I think I should just feud. I think one of the issues that they have with women's wrestling generally in a lot of American wrestling companies is that the women only feud over the titles, and whoever isn't feuding over the titles isn't around. So them just having a feud because they don't like each other like the men do is perfectly fine for me.
Yeah. Sean, anything else?
Yeah, and well, Wade, it's going to be sad because in 2 weeks I'm not going to be able to call on Mondays anymore. I'm not going to be able to be on here, so that's going to be a really sad day. My work schedule is changing again, where I'm going to have to start working late on Monday, and it's going to be sad because it was hard watching Raw at like midnight and trying to stay up, and like, oh, it's going to be hard again. But it's okay. I'll go back and listen, obviously, after the fact.
Gotta email the flagship then.
I will. Yeah. And then, real quick, I went back and listened to guys. You don't have to be a VIP. Just go back and listen to Wade Keller's 5 year ago post shows. It was hilarious. You guys just cracking up on the mixed tag elimination stuff 5 years ago. Oh my gosh, that stuff was so bad. It was just fun watching listen to people rant on that. It was wonderful.
Yes.
So, Wade, I appreciate all you do. Go VIP, everybody. Chris, good to hear from you, man. Good to see you on here, and appreciate you guys taking my call as always.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Good work as always. Okay, let's we'll keep an eye on the chat room. Now's a good time if you want to get noticed, because I'm going to switch to the inbox. Super chats will get you noticed here at the end of the show. I do want to go to emails. We got JB from Detroit. We have some comments on Raw. Drew got suspended for pushing two refs and elbowing Adam Pearce, but not nearly murdering Punk and leaving him in a bloody heap. People beat up refs and security guards on nearly a weekly basis at this point. These inconsistencies are really starting to bother me. I get that the idea was to strengthen Punk as a face for asking for the suspension to be lifted, but it still didn't make sense as to how we got here. I was so happy to hear about fines and ramifications for what Drew did, and then they added on that Punk got fined too. They got to start somewhere, Chris, and maybe they will be consistent going forward. I mean, I think the first thing Adam Pearce should say is, Bo, now that you're in my office, I have some fines to dish out, some suspensions. Maybe the police want to talk with you. It's going to be really hard to be truly consistent, but I would like them to try. And start this week. I'm not gonna complain about being inconsistent if they start doing the right thing now.
Yeah, and I guess could you fine Braun Breaker for, I guess, pointing at the screen and as a distraction to run after Sami Zayn or any of those things? But yeah, I think there has to be some sort of constitution of what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And I feel like they're only doing it for Drew and Punk because they don't want people to think that, you know, Drew's going to run in on Punk during this promo. So they had him suspended. They don't want people to think that Punk is going to run in on Drew next week in Dayton. So that's why he's banned from the arena. I just think it's more for this particular storyline and not something that they're going to do for everyone, though I think that's what they should do.
Number 2 from JB, also they acknowledged it on commentary, but Punk's actions also screwed over the uber babyface Seth Rollins, which might not be the best way to keep getting Punk cheered against Drew. I'll admit I was never that much of a Punk fan, but I find myself actively disliking him the most I have in his career right now. I do think that they are involving Seth in the storyline so that Drew and Seth can have a SummerSlam match if Punk isn't healed in time. If Punk is healed, they could do a triple threat and have Drew and Punk singles match at Survivor Series or the Royal Rumble. Anything you want to react to there, Chris?
Not really. I think we just talked about it before. I think they just wanted to move away from what happened at Money in the Bank and then go back to a Drew Punk focus going forward.
Why is Adam Pearce acting as if Liv requested the mixed tag match wouldn't be causing Dom internal strife? Has he not been watching the same Raw as the rest of us for weeks? Also, just a suggestion to Dom, chicken tenders might not be the best pre-match meal. Yeah, I teach their own, I guess. I don't know what do you make of I mean, they just wanted to have the match and they tried to explain it, but did it work?
Well, one of the things I don't for me it doesn't. I mean, one of the things for me that doesn't make sense on Raw is that one of the matches was Dragunov versus Braun Baker that only happened because Braun Baker tags Sami Zayn and Dragunov saved him and then asked for a match, and I just thought Adam Pearce should be relieved that this happens so he could have another match. I mean, I think that it doesn't make. I mean, how they get matches on wrestling shows are odd because they book 2 of them. The other 3 sometimes just randomly happen because
I know, all the time.
Someone comes out or whatever happens. So I guess it's fine in the context of what they do. It just to me it's not it doesn't make sense. I mean, I'll go back to 80s wrestling when they would tell you what would be on the show at the beginning because they planned it out and knew what would happen as opposed to hopefully some people get into a fight so we can have another match.
I'd be for them announcing a match nobody wants to see and then Pearce going, we have to bump this match to make room for this, but you can tune into main event and see it or something like that. Okay, so next, I think it was fairly telegraphed that the Wyatt Six were getting involved in the Jake Gable match. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's been 3 consecutive weeks now, basically the same interruption with Nikki Cross coming out with a VHS. I understand that there's been a bit of a professional on the tapes themselves, but there also has to be real-time in-arena cooperation fairly soon, in my opinion. So, just what do you think about the presentation of the Wyatt Six? The logic and the illogic kind of mixed in.
Yeah, I had the same thought. Someone has to be flipping the switch and having all these lights in there. I don't know if it's Eric Rowan or Dexter Loomis or whatever the names are going to be are working in the back as stagehands or on the rigging team or whatever. But yeah, that has to be explained how that happens. But again, they're spooky, and so I guess it doesn't have to be.
JB also says it's interesting that we're getting a jaded Pete Dunne inserted into a pretty straightforward tough guy brawler angle between Bronson Reed and Sheamus. I'm wondering where this is ultimately leading. Are they elevating Dunne for a singles run that begins with Sheamus? Is this leading to a triple threat? If Dunne gets elevated, what happens to Tyler Bate? I was thinking that this is more to set up a team with Sheamus and Dunne, but they want to, tie up some loose ends and make it seem like, Dunne has agency and he's hurt by Sheamus, but he's willing, ultimately to reconcile if Sheamus says the right thing. So that crossed my mind. I'm not saying I'm leaning towards it, but I think that's in the another possibility is they just with Tyler Bate being out for a while, Sheamus going to tag teams and teaming with Dunne. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think they wanted to show that Dunne just didn't accept Sheamus after what happened before, that Sheamus has to make some kind of restitution. And hopefully he'll do that. Obviously, he's wrestling Bronson Reed next week, so there might be some more movement in that direction next week.
Sean, as always, thank you for the super chat. He said Adam Pearce must have a huge headache. Go VIP, everyone. Appreciate the super chat. Sean also says Pete Dunne isn't a main event guy at all. He's good, but not that good. Yeah, I agree. I mean, Dunne's good, but I mean, he's he shouldn't be in the top tier. I mean, but I want him on my roster, and I like this. I like what they might be doing here, or the beginning of a variety of things that they might be doing. Let's see. Will Priest Gunther have enough heat on it for a big SummerSlam match? I love Gunther, and Priest is okay, but I'm really not sure that I'm feeling their dynamic headed into the match. Is this too weak of a match to kind of co-headline SummerSlam? To me, I bet there's 4 matches that feel bigger than this, except for the notion that maybe we're going to witness Gunther winning his first world title in WWE.
I think the problem with this match, which I think they're trying to rectify starting next week, is that it hasn't really been a focus. Gunther hasn't been there, and Priest was wrestling Seth Rollins. And so while these other matches, even they haven't been announced, like a Cody Rhodes and Solo Sikoa, or even something like Rhea and Liv Morgan, have kind of been in the ether, potentially happening, while this has kind of been in the background because of other focuses. But now I think they're going to I think next week will tell the tale with what they do next week with their first really interaction with the match coming up, to see how hot it's going to be. But I think it's going to be hard to be more than, top, 3rd or 4th at best.
We'll go to Azan, who says, good evening, Wade and Chris. I have a couple short points. Adam Pearce is heading toward a character change or removal from TV. They've been doing the idea he's losing control of Raw and getting frustrated week after week. I don't see this as different than his character from week 1. I don't see them writing him off. I think he's really good at this role as a disheveled middle management guy trying to restore order. He's showing, he's standing up for himself, like with Drew. And I don't know. I mean, I don't see this as a markedly different place for him. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think anything is different. I think he's just being Adam Pearce, as Raw GM has been so far.
Yep. All right, then what do you think about Miz at this stage of his career? I know WWE is doing a bio on him this week, and Cena called him the most underrated performer in WWE. I mean, by who? Maybe. I mean, who is Cena referring to? When he says underrated, it's such a empty statement. Yeah, Chris.
I will say this about Miz: he has had a much longer WWE career than I think anyone could imagine. From his background on, he was Road Rules, I believe, one of those shows. Yeah. So the fact that he's been in WWE for this long and has been, pretty decently pushed, to me is actually credit to him. I think that it's probably more than people would have imagined, myself included.
Oh, for sure. And there's times where Miz, I've defended him and thought he's really good in his role. Other times I'm just like, I've had my fill. When he's making faces and dancing around as Truth raps, it's like, okay, this isn't the Miz that I like or want to see more of. It's hit or miss. I mean, where is he at this stage of his career? I mean, he's a lifer, but it wouldn't mind if he took some time off from TV just to freshen up. I don't think you got to wedge him into the show. When it comes to, as Rude Dog was saying, who's underrated. I think a lot of wrestlers deserve TV time before Miz right now. I think he's kind of just too familiar, and you don't have to force him in. Just take him off TV for a while and bring him back in when it feels fresher. All right. Let's see. Chris J is up now. VIP member. He said, if we don't want wrestling companies to book crap finishes, then we can't all cry that they're defining them down when someone loses. I wanted Breaker to be Dragunov clean. It wouldn't define Dragunov down. Everyone assumes Braun is better than Dragunov at this point. In many cases, it's the fans' fault because they choose to see a wrestler as being defined down by losing. If Alabama football beats Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt is not defined down. If Andy has a competitive game with Alabama and loses, Vanderbilt can look strong. We need to be better fans if we want better finishes. Is it our fault Paul Levesque is booking so many screwy finishes? There is a point. I make it all the time. Good teams lose. The Boston Celtics won the NBA title. Florida Panthers won the NHL title. They lost a lot of games to mediocre and other great teams this year. It doesn't mean they're not champions. But pro wrestling is different. But the booker's in charge of how they want that framed. The announcers play a big role, Chris, in what wins and losses mean. I certainly am not going to make the argument Dragunov couldn't have afforded to lose tonight. But you also, if you're Paul Levesque, you're looking at the big picture. How many matches can we afford to have him lose before people start looking at him like Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci, who were with Gunther, who just always lost? Just no one took him seriously. And if you don't feel like you can spend TV time giving him a win or multiple wins to rebuild him, I think I understand his conundrum that he feels that leads to finishes like this. Plus, I just want to give Braun Breaker heel heat for being a bad sport.
Yeah, the sports analogy is tough because you can lose a game, a match, whatever, and you'll have other matches provided it's not the end of the playoffs. I think the problem in wrestling is if you're not someone figured into a feud, you may not have that opportunity to get more wins. I mean, Vanderbilt isn't bad because they lose to Alabama. Vanderbilt's bad because they lose to everybody in the SEC. So you can, I mean, I'm a Jets fan. Jets haven't made the playoffs since 2010. I know a lot about losing football.
That can't be true.
That is true. The Jets.
That can't be true.
The longest streak in the 4 major sports. Probably if I want to count MLS because I love soccer, of not making the playoffs. Every single team in the NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NFL, except the Jets, have made the playoffs since 2010.
Every baseball team.
I
know they expanded the playoffs. Wow, I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, they've expanded by what they call playoffs. In the NBA, if you make the play-in, that doesn't really count as playoffs. But every NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, and NFL team, except the Jets, have made their respective playoffs since the Jets last made it in the 2010 season, which was a long time ago for me. That's the year I met my wife, and obviously we've been together for 14 years. So there you go.
Is Aaron Rodgers going to be the answer? Is he still their quarterback?
He is. I'm not a huge fan of him. I don't like this entire situation with the Jets. I'm not someone who focuses a lot on preseason because I'm a big sports fan and I like to watch sports in game.
Right.
But
I'm the same way. Yeah.
And he wasn't at the mini camp because he was in Egypt apparently. And to me, it's like they play, I think, the 49ers the first game of the season, and let's see how he does then. I mean, banking your entire franchise on a 40-year-old quarterback coming off a torn Achilles is not the smartest idea, but 2010.
I predict Kirk Cousins is going to lead the Jets to the playoffs this year. There'll be a trade or an acquisition of some kind with Atlanta drafting a quarterback and Cousins sort of, I don't know. That's why would the Jets take on that contract? But I have no idea if it's logistically
Kirk
possible.
Cousins used the Jets when he signed with Minnesota. He went to the Jets. He's like, oh, I have this contract, and Minnesota gave him a better contract. So I don't think he wants to be in the New York market.
Oh, that'd be. I want to see him in the New York market. That'd be fun. All right, he won a lot of people over in Minnesota. He lived like a couple miles from me. I almost was tempted to go try to get a showing at his house. I just wanted to see where he lived. I have some my son's friends live near him. All right, let's see. Did Chris J have anything else? Oh, he said, I think Punk got the worst of this with Seth, which is rare. Which is interesting. Yeah. And I mean, it's just having Punk stand with a microphone in his hand, not replying was really something. All right. Jordan from Melbourne, Australia. It's early Tuesday afternoon here, so I don't usually get to watch Raw live. The show didn't drag despite being 3 hours, as there was a lot happening, including the usual Easter eggs in the background. The potential card for SummerSlam is quite interesting, especially if Punk and Rhea are available, but even still, future cards and matches are exciting. Seth being included in the McIntyre and Punk feud adds matches in length, and all 3 matches could potentially happen at Mania. It's great to have a storyline and feuds that don't need the title. How do you see the feud continuing heading into Mania? Do you want to speculate on that? I mean, we talked quite a bit about it. I'm have no idea. Sometimes I'm like, oh, we can tell where they're going, or it's one or this, it's this or this. It depends on Punk's availability. Are they going to do a triple threat? What's the course of them fighting for a title and being diverted? I don't know. And I like that. I mean, that's been the case with AEW and WWE this summer. I don't really know where they're going with some of the top feuds.
Yeah, I think Rollins versus Punk will be at WrestleMania, but Drew and Punk will be through the fall. Rollins will do something else, maybe get linked up with Punk again around Royal Rumble time.
All right, then he also says the Wyatt 6 storyline continues to add intrigue, but I'm struggling to see how they would structure matches and feuds. Gable turning face seems unlikely. The Creeds turning heel seems unlikely. I don't think so. And the Wyatts, though, although heels get the crowd popping, where do you see it going? And when might we see some of them wrestling? So again, I think a lot of possibilities are out there. But it does seem like leaning to the Wyatts being baby faces. I think the Creeds could definitely be heels. I don't think that's. I mean, eventually they'll be baby faces, but Chris, can the Creeds be heels?
I think
Gable?
so. They're big amateur wrestling looking guys. Yeah, they can be heels.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Junaid says, let's see. I'll introduce brief scenarios here. I'm sorry, I skipped past. Hi guys, hope you're doing well. Rhea. Wow, what a stunning end of Raw. She seems quite upset. Speaking of which, I'll introduce some brief scenarios of how Rhea can react towards Dom and Liv in the coming weeks, and you can give your thoughts. Next week, Rhea furiously demands Dom explain himself and asks him why he hasn't been returning her calls. Dom is naturally very nervous and cannot get more than a couple words out at first. Number 2, Dominic naturally blames Liv, and Rhea shuts Dominic out of the Judgment Day and takes charge of the faction after previously letting Damian get more of a say. 3, Dominic keeps making excuses for weeks, just as he's been doing with Damian, saying he tried to handle it and Liv wasn't leaving him alone, and then his deadbeat dad Ray was sticking his nose in his business and he was going to tell Liv before Rhea came out and it was over and to leave him alone for good. Or Rhea accepts none of this and just leaves him high and dry and says she's done with him. She trusts him and Dom made his bed, so to speak. Meanwhile, at SummerSlam, the rest of Judgment Day turn on Damian after he loses to Gunther, and we see Rhea and Damian, the clear baby faces, and Dom and Liv get back with the other members of Judgment Day. I think that's what happens, or that's most likely. Rhea definitely wins her championship back from Liv at SummerSlam, and Dom and Rhea are now an actual couple, and Dominic is like a full-blown rebel trying to get under Rhea's skin. And finally, Liv and Dom are pest heels and part of the new Judgment Day, and Rhea is still badass, but now officially a babyface, and Damian is also babyface. A lot of variations of things we're talking about there. Chris, anything jump out to you as novel or something you hadn't thought of that they might do?
No, I think the emailer put a lot of good scenarios that we talked about. Definitely, I think it'll end up with a Priest Rhea babyface somehow, either together or separately, and maybe the rest of the folks in the Judgment Day.
Yeah. Sean also super chatted and said, McAfee, get rid of the telestrator. Thanks. I thought this week was an intriguing use of the telestrator. Speaking of Judgment Day, with what was going on with Liv and Dom, I might watch that back.
Definitely different than the days of watching John Madden and Pat Summerall. I'll tell you that much.
Yes, it is. All right, then let's see. Finally, what are your thoughts on the scenario? Is a $25,000 fine enough of a punishment for Punk's recent actions? I applaud WWE for at least addressing that Punk's recent actions have been bad and punishing him, but I feel like Drew accidentally elbowing Adam Pearce when he's understandably upset isn't enough for a suspension, even for a week. Punk, on the other hand, has ruined championship matches, but I'm pretty certain that he will be turning heel post SummerSlam. Interesting. When he presumably feuds with Seth. If, and I generally don't mean this as a shot at Punk, he doesn't get injured again. It's understandable. It's fair. Seth just made too many good points, and Punk came off as petty once again. It was a great promo, by the way, and I was impressed with both Punk and Seth tonight. They both showed fire. But ultimately, is $25,000 enough punishment for Punk's recent actions? No, I think they should establish that a world championship match is sacred. I don't think they should let people interfere in them. Now, they have an out this time, and people have pointed it out. It's a triple threat match. Anything goes. Drew cashed in legally. Punk interfered legally once it became a triple threat. So you can make the case that Punk didn't do anything wrong because it's totally within the rules this time. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, and that's kind of I guess they're out of it, the triple threat match. It reminds me of, I was at one of the maybe very much talked about papers the last 10 years, which was the 2015 Royal Rumble. One of my friend Joe's bachelor party, I had to explain to one of the non-wrestling friends why in the Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar, John Cena match, all these things happened because there were no rules in the triple threat match. And he kind of looked at me like, okay, because it doesn't really make sense when you explain it, because these other matches have rules, but this one's a triple threat, so it doesn't. So because triple threat matches don't have rules and everyone can run in, there you have it. So.
And did you explain, well, it creates a booking conundrum because they don't want to make them elimination matches because then extra people have to do jobs and that makes people uncomfortable?
No, I didn't get into all that. I just said, this is the rules that they have. It doesn't make sense, but this is what they do. And I watch anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. People watch anyway. But I mean, the explanation is worse than how it first appears when once you get into the meta aspect of the stupidity. Honestly, it should be called the CM Punk augmentation rule. Like that Punk's interference should just cause them to reevaluate the rules for triple threat matches. Because I think I would rather have Miz on TV every week being annoying in exchange for never hearing Michael Cole say again, it's legal because it's a triple threat match. Because all I hear is, this is absurd and you shouldn't get invested in anything because our rules are stupid and the best man doesn't win in WWE. It's just whoever takes advantage of our nonsense rules.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I mean, TNA's having for Slammiversary, their main event is a six person elimination match for the title, and I am so intrigued to see how it goes. Just because I'm kind of like, I haven't seen a 6-person elimination. I guess elimination chamber is a little bit different than the only match I see, because these triple threat rules are kind of ridiculous. Thank you for I just saw someone put up a chat about wrestling.
BJF. BJF just said, good to see you and like your show. Speaking of which, search PWTorch in your podcast app of choice to subscribe to the PWTorch Daily Cast. We have 3 main podcast feeds. There's a 4th one. If you search PWTorch, you'll see a charcoal gray logo that features free samples of our VIP shows, and also is where you can upgrade to a VIP membership using your Apple account. Search PWTorch, subscribe to the Daily Cast, a different show every day of the week with different themes. We talked about that earlier in the show, including Chris Maitland's Wrestling Coast to Coast with Justin McClelland. Chris, thank you. Great having you on. You already plugged your show, but give a brief plug again.
Sure, thank you. Wrestling Coast to Coast comes out late Wednesdays. Justin and I go around the world of independent wrestling, and we do talk a lot about booking decisions and whether they make sense for someone watching a show, either for the first time or not on a regular basis. And the question we always ask, is this a show or promotion we want to watch again? I think that's a really important aspect of wrestling. You know, you watch a show once, will you watch it again? So that's Wrestling Coast to Coast. Beyond Wrestling's American Rana. It's our show for this week.
Excellent. I will be, when we sign off here, I'm going to be recording the Wade Keller Hotline, which is reviewing Raw start to finish. I have things to say, believe it or not, about things we haven't talked about yet. And if you do not see Raw, or don't get a chance to watch it start to finish, you're watching YouTube clips, you don't have cable, whatever, VIP membership gives you a chance to, before you listen to these post shows on our podcast feed, you can actually listen to my rundown. It takes, around 20 minutes. I just run down Raw start to finish. Same thing for Dynamite and SmackDown. To start at the beginning, run through everything that happened, add commentary and analysis to little things that we don't get into on this show, and other thoughts on big topics. You can listen to that first and then jump right into the post show and know what the heck we're talking about, because we do cater this post show for the most part to people who watch the show or are up on what happened one way or the other. So it's one of the many perks with VIP membership is my reviews start to finish of Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. Those go up late Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights. And so, I know a lot of people have mentioned they appreciate that. And it is how they keep up on what is going on in promotions or TV shows that they don't watch. Chris, thank you. We went long. I was like pretty committed to doing a shorter show, but I mean, it just happens. So we'll deal with that. But thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, we'll do this again. Thanks, everybody.